Welcome to the Somers Town Board work session of Thursday, February 7th. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And I would like to begin tonight's meeting. We just said a pledge allegiance to the flag. Our town is a tolerant town, a welcoming town, but there have been a couple of incidents over the last couple of weeks that have been very disturbing to this community. And in response to the posting of flyers found in Somers and the surrounding area by a hate group, and the recent incident in the high school regarding a hate symbol, I wanted to reaffirm the town's steadfast position that hate, intimidation towards any group in our community will not be tolerated. This town board denounces such groups and their propaganda. I urge anyone who sees flyers to report it immediately to our building department so that we can go out and remove the signs. We also support the Somers School District for its immediate response to the hate symbol and for their efforts to educate our youth on the importance of tolerance and inclusiveness. History has shown us that hatred grows in the darkness of ignorance. In Somers, we are stronger than hate. So with that said,
If I could just make a comment on that.
Sure.
I want to just reiterate what you said. I obviously have two kids in the school district, and they did a very good job of making sure the kids were aware and discussing it. That because we also had the incident with the vandalism in the library at the high school, and both my daughter from the middle school and my son from the high school came home and said that as opposed to backing away from it and not saying anything, they discussed it in classes. My son, I think it was more his history class, but I thought they dealt with it very upfront, and I think both Mr. Getman and Mr. Bear did a nice job.
well, yeah, there's articles in the newspaper. We would have addressed this sooner, but these things happened after our last town board meeting. Yes.
Yeah, Rick, I just want to thank you for doing that, reading that. I think all of us feel the same way. People should feel comfortable in this town. If in fact they don't, if they feel that they have to report something, report it to the police, the town board, supervisor's office. We're here to, ensure that, you're in a safe community. A few years back, I was at a meeting up on Route 6 at the synagogue. There was state police there. There was counseling people there. And there was the political municipal people there. And again, we said the same thing. If you have an issue, report it. And I'm happy to say that the school district's behind us, and all our municipal departments are all in sync with this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Now, the town, look, this type of outward expression of hatred and propaganda is really not tolerated here. And when we know about it, we're going to shed some light on it and discuss it.
Well, one of the beautiful things in America is you have freedom of speech, even for crazy ideas, but that doesn't mean people have to tolerate it, and certainly it would seem to be contrary to all American ideals. When you're talking about exclusion and hatred for people based upon where they come from or other things like that, so we all stand united on that. It's just not it shouldn't be tolerated in America, and that's the value of sort of a social conscience. And people understanding that you are really separating yourself from the rest of us when you hold those ideas.
Hear, hear. Okay. I think that these thoughts needed to be expressed in public at a
very
town
good.
board meeting.
Thank you.
I'm glad we all had a comment. Moving along to public comment, I make a motion to open public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm guessing we have somebody.
So moved. I moved as chair there. So if you would please identify yourself, speak into the mic, and give us your name and address.
Snuck up.
My name is Anthony Melito. I live at 266 Mayapat Avenue.
And what do you have for us tonight?
Traffic. Since the permit was given out to the golf driving range, the traffic from Mayapat comes down Kennard, which is Mayapat, to Baldwin, Lake Baldwin, makes a left and comes up Mayapat Avenue. If I had a camera, I wish I had to take a more picture. They're coming up at 45 to 55 miles an hour. All right? I spoke with the chief. He put a sign up. They got a
Speed sign?
speed sign. And he was trying to put in more patrol cars. You know, not more patrol cars. Somebody that not busy come up to Mayapat Avenue, sit during the school hours, because 2 people passed the school bus stop
Really?
on
That's
the
it.
left, crossed the double-sided line. And when I spoke to the driver of the bus, she says, you report this to your supervisors? Oh, yes, I did. The chief does not know anything about what's going on other than what I told him. He says, and I spoke to the super maintenance, and they said, no, nobody's passing the school buses. Nobody reported it. I said, well, 2 drivers told me. Because at a point, I got my grandchildren on that little stretch from County Line Road to Route 6. We have 11 children. 1 is retarded, and the other is mentally. And I don't want to have to pick up a kid that gets hit by one of those cars. It's about 3 weeks we're working on it. 3 times a cop car was parked. I can park them on our driveway. Get them, stop them. Do me a favor, stop them.
So you brought an issue regarding school buses and
Yeah,
people
well,
speeding to the chief, and he enhanced enforcement.
He gave a work order to all the. Well, the biggest problem, the guys are all part-timers. We got 18 men on the force. They're all part-timers.
Yeah.
But as busy as this town's getting, believe me, how could 18 guys, part-timers, if he splits them up in 4-hour shifts?
They
Well, they don't do
They
4-hour
how could
shifts.
it- how
do
could it
20-hour shifts. They do 20-hour
They have,
shifts.
they have not 20-hour shifts, they work 20 hours. And there's always
That's true.
multiple police on, especially at the times you're talking about.
So it's a full-time force manned by part-timers. But, I hear you, there's not enough. you're
It's
saying,
3
okay?
weeks, they're 4 weeks since the school started, and they built at the golf course. That was the biggest disaster, because we fought that building of that lot, the golf course, 5 times, and the zoning board of appeals turned it down. Told them it's strictly commercial, heavy commercial. All of a sudden, this guy building up there. And they come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 7:30 to 8:30. You got traffic on Mayapat Avenue, a little section. They don't care about a school bus. And there are people that live in Mayapat. The people that live in Somers or Lake Baldwin, they obey it. They see the buses, they stop. But I'm afraid to stand out and watch my grandchildren get on the bus to have to go pick them up if they got hit by a car.
No.
Well, we can get signs, even, they got one sign up, children. That's it, nothing coming from Jim Smith's or nothing. We could put signs, make it a 25-mile-an-hour zone, give the police a chance to enforce the code.
So at one of our, I think it was at one of our last meetings, I read a update of a police report that people like you have come to the town board pointing out problem areas and the actions that we have taken. So it was a listing of how many people were stopped for speed, how many for stop signs, how many for this, how many for that. You've spoken to the chief. We've begun enhanced
I
Enforcement
thank him for putting this sign up for this, that telling you your speed. But if you stand there, I stand with my kids when they're getting off the bus or getting on the bus. I'm standing there, you could see the people, they're coming down 40 miles an hour through the sign. It's saying 40 miles an hour, they're still speeding.
Yeah, well, it's against the law to pass a school bus
Right.
anywhere.
Definitely.
So-
That's, I'm afraid.
I-
I'm totally afraid. And
What you're describing is
I
a
told
dangerous
the chief-
situation.
could you get the board, get more people, more workers, more cops? 18 to break up the force. That's not, we're too big. We're getting too big in this town. And Route 6 is getting trouble. Right now, traffic backs up from Whispering Pines to the traffic light on Mayapat Avenue. By the way, which I fought the town to put that light in. Judge Fernando from Supreme Court gave me the letter that showed that that was labeled the most lethal intersection in Westchester County. They
Right.
put the
That
light.
was just a two-way stop at that point, right?
And they put the light up, it was a blinker. The town board sitting there like you are sitting now, when I said that, they said, oh, well, the 18-wheelers, when they come up the hill, they stop, they're gonna get stuck, they're gonna get started. Call a tow truck, getting towed away. I'm tired. I pulled 3 people out of cars that got hit on Route 6 because they come up at 60 miles an hour, and at the hill, they don't see it. Left turn or right turn.
Well,
chil-
that's one traffic device that was installed and is controlling traffic, and that's a much safer intersection, for that effort.
But can
Anthony-
we get speed limit signs?
Yeah. I mean, we have recently installed some signs that say, drive like your kids live here, like your kids live here. And it's just a reminder to people that, look, this may not be the street you live on, but there are other people that have kids that live on the street, and be respectful. So I can talk to the chief. I'm going to get a report from him, what type of enhanced police activity we can do on Mayapack Avenue.
He said, I say, it's 4 weeks, 5 times. One of the sergeants and a couple of...
Okay, so we are reacting to what you're telling us.
He parked in the driveway, catch him, come up.
Has he caught any?
Huh?
Have any been caught, stopped, ticketed?
I
Not sure.
never asked any tickets were issued.
I will.
All right?
Okay. So what we need is
I'm saying, I
enhanced
never asked the
enforcement.
chief. I spoke to the chief, I thanked him for
Sure.
the, what do you call it? The sign that tells,
Speed limit
Speed.
sign.
Speed limit signs.
Yeah, it's a speed limit sign, right?
and I asked him about can we get 20 miles an hour, 15 miles, or 20 mile an hour speed limit signs? And school area, not school, but children signs over by Jim Smith, and down in, well, one sign says children is down on the corner of County Line Road. But they don't obey it.
Right.
Well, so we need enhanced enforcement, probably. Maybe we
They
can look
traffic-
at changing, if it's possible, changing the speed limits on those roads.
Either they go one
And then, and better signage to make sure everybody knows.
Bullen Road
So we'll
has
have
gotta
to
be
investigate
widened
that.
too. Because
Well, we
they-
can't- it's not in our
they-
town, so.
They take,
Oh, well.
they take the shortcut
Yeah.
to miss the traffic
Yeah,
on Route
right.
6
Gotcha.
and 118.
Right, they come around the other
They
way.
come through
Right.
Kennard and down.
Right.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Alito,
It is a
you've,
problem.
I think you've made your point.
Okay, that's it.
We got it.
Thank you.
Well, you can stay there, you know.
Thank you.
Just-
see.
We give you a little more than 3 minutes, but you deserve
Okay,
it, so.
I'll give you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll look.
thank you.
So, Rick, can we enlist the support of the state police to get them up there? It's a state highway, it's a state road.
Yeah, well, that's the chief. If the chief thinks he can, depend upon them to,
I don't think we can
Contribute.
depend upon them, I think we should ask them.
yeah. you could.
What about the school bus drivers? I mean, they're on site. Do they have any ability to just take down a driver, license plate number?
What's that?
They could,
The school bus
school
drivers
bus
themselves, if
drivers
they see
who
this
witness a car coming by them.
Get the license plate number of that.
Well, they're pretty,
They're more concerned with
pretty
making sure
busy.
There's a kid crossing the
Actually,
street.
I think there's
But
state law pending where they're going to put cameras on the stop arms.
So good.
Oh, that'd
Yeah.
be great.
Car passes automatically is
Yeah,
going, not gonna
yeah.
help right away, but
Because I
that's
have,
gonna be a requirement on buses.
I
You got a
have been hearing
50%
more about
chance,
this.
though, if this is-
I've been getting
Can't
complaints
pass
about people passing school buses.
Yeah, what,
All
I
of a
don't
sudden,
get
in the last
That's crazy.
month, I've just been hearing more and more about people passing school buses. I don't know.
You know, the other thing, we can talk to the transportation department of the school, have them just talk to the school bus drivers and make sure that they report what they're seeing.
That's true, Joe Bernardi.
Yeah, Bernardi.
okay, no, that's a good suggestion about the state police. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Okay, seeing no one else, I'll make a motion to close public comment.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next agenda item is Parks and Recreation. Authorize the following per January 29th, 2019, January 30th and January 31st memos from Steve Ralston, Superintendent of Parks and Recreation. Execute the concession agreement, O'Neill's concession, permission to go to bid for summer camp trip transportation, and permission to replace the 2006 Chevy pickup with a dump bed truck from county contract not to exceed $57,000. So I will, we'll move that to consensus agenda. Yeah, if there's any issues, questions on that.
I'm just curious,
Are we-
the 2006 Chevy pickup, did it die?
Yeah, it's
I mean, I know
it's
old,
rusted
but-
out, yeah.
Okay, good.
So we're buying this from the county, is that what it is?
Well, they have a county contract with certain dealerships.
So we're buying this under the auspices of the county?
Yeah, it's one of those shared type things where we go off of the county contract.
Okay. Sure.
The highway department does it sometimes also, but the town goes out and gets better deals on its own usually.
Sometimes, right. When our highway superintendent's the master of,
Right.
finding out about those contracts.
On the World War II trucks.
That works.
Okay, so moving along to town board, our item number 1 is Westchester Power presentation. We have Dan Welsh with us this evening.
Hey.
And Dan,
Hey, can everybody see this or?
You're gonna need a microphone, you got one there?
yeah, this is my thing.
Just make sure you
Yeah.
have it.
Pull this back?
No, I think everyone.
It's fine.
Okay,
That's good.
Yeah.
all right, thanks for
Almost everybody.
testing. Or is this just, sorry about that? Okay.
If you have to, just take this one. Is it too much hassle? Just use this one. Sorry, guys. Just give it back. I feel like talking. Oh, ouch.
We can hear you.
Oh, can you get that knife out of my back?
So, oh, geez. Problems over there. So, thanks for putting up so front. By the way, we're having the same discussions in Lewisboro about the past school buses. It is not an infrequent phenomenon, unfortunately. So we're also looking forward to when they can finally install the cameras.
Since you've discussed that, are there increased numbers that they have documented, or it's just?
We don't have statistics, but we were looking into the camera thing.
Yeah.
For a while, and as you said, learned it's up in Albany, and New York City, I guess, has stoplight cameras, which we legally can't do here, I don't think yet either. So it's coming. There's no doubt it's coming.
So Dan, you're is a councilman in Lewisboro.
Yeah.
Right. So for the public.
Yeah, well, it's not a, it's not only townwide problem, it seems to be a community-wide
Yeah.
problem, so.
Right, and then we all have the state roads which go right through our town. So,
Right.
So the subject today is Westchester Power. I'm Dan Welsh. I'm from Sustainable Westchester. We're here with my colleagues, Jenna Amundsen and Virginia Steinberg, who you may or may not have bumped into because they've been hanging around in Zomer's tabling a little bit and trying to get the word out and educating people about the program. So we're going to do a quick little update. I do want to dive a little bit, do a dip into the weeds around the day-night accounts, and we'll look at the schedule and how we came up with the bid targets for the bidding for the upcoming RFP. Well, the RFP that's already out actually at this point. So just a quick, 15-second basics for the folks who haven't been exposed to it yet. Westchester Power is a community bulk electricity purchasing program. It focuses on the energy only. You've got a big chunk of your bill, which is still NYSEG's distribution that's untouched, but it's about buying energy. It's unique in that it's an opt-out format. So when the community selects the program, everybody who's just in plain vanilla NYSEG rolls over unless they opt out. It's been going since 2016, and we've got 26 municipalities now. We started out with 20. We just added Dobbs Ferry about a week ago. They're doing their outreach letter now, and Rye City came in at the end of the year. In NYSEG, we have 5 towns. That's Bedford, Lewisboro, North Salem, Pound Ridge, and Somers. Pound Ridge just came on last fall. There are about 100,000 plus customers. I think it's up to about 107, and 11,000 of those are in NYSEG territory, though that's going to go down because we're dropping the day-night accounts out. And as I said, the new contract for the Con Ed territory was just executed and started on January 1st, and we're here to talk about the NYSEG territory contract.
Dan, a question.
Yeah.
The day-night contracts, those would primarily, for our town, be people in Heritage Hills?
Yeah, that's the biggest bunch. They tend to be in townhomes and things like that.
Right.
But I think Heritage
So
Hills
there's no
is-
way to service those through this program?
We're going to get into that.
Just trying to
Okay.
get it.
There's got a whole bunch of stuff.
Sorry.
So it was fun to have a little visual about how the rates have been going. And this is just a representation of the fixed line, obviously being the fixed price for the program. Very small difference between the green and the standard products that we have.
See, Dan, just one thing on this, because we get a lot of questions on this. Most customers don't know that every month the rate varies. And if
Correct.
you take a look at that March rate in 2018 at 5 cents, going to 10 cents, that's a 100% increase.
Right.
Month over month.
Right.
Now, we get complaints and observations, particularly in Heritage Hills.
Right.
They're all electric, and they scream that their electric bills
Sure.
are doubling, and they don't know what to do about it, and it's.
Oh, yeah.
So
And we get calls on the spike months. We get calls and say, your program. I
Right.
say, our program rate didn't change.
So, one of the things we tell them is you can opt into a program like this, or you can go on a budget.
Right.
Right.
Now the budget will smooth that out for you, definitely.
Take note, public, I mean, look how volatile those rates are.
Right. So that's this is the residential, and this is the same type of graph for the commercial here. I mean, it's a visual. You can't get everything from this, but it tells you exactly what you're saying. When we go to look at the savings that the program is generating, there's actually 3 pieces here. You just asked me quickly about the sales tax piece, which is a mysterious piece, but it is there. There's the pure supply savings, which is just our price versus the NYSEG power price. But also, when you participate in this program, you get, and sorry for all the ones, when you translate from Google Sheets into PowerPoint, it
The
doesn't
second one.
always bring everything
And the
in
third
correctly. So it's all number one. You also get an exemption on the local sales tax on the delivery portion of the bill, which is not intuitive. That's to say the tax on the NYSEG utility side. And it's only the local, it's not the state. So that's exempted. There's also a billing charge, which for some reason, again, not intuitive for me. You'd think that there'd also be handling or whatever for us, but you're exempted from that. So these are the components of the savings. So when we look at the residential, and we're just looking at this point at the standard residential, because we pulled out the day-night stuff. We're going to look at that in a moment. But just the standard residential, we're seeing that we're seeing savings. They're coming from the supply and the sales tax and the billing charge. They total up to 400 some thousand. We'll see in a subsequent slide what that means on a per account basis. But this is for the residential. And on the commercial, the same situation with the three components of the sales.
So Dan, just on this slide,
Yeah.
I think this town board, when we got into the program, decided to go with the standard.
Right.
So that was a quite bit more of savings. Right?
Well, let's not look at the gross savings. We'll have a slide that shows the per account savings. It's just
Okay.
more relevant because the gross savings is a function of the number of accounts. So there's just very few green accounts in Somers, so that's why the gross
But
savings is
articulate
lower.
what the savings is in each one of those categories. That's $62,000 over the program life?
On the commercial accounts,
Commercial, I'll go
that's
back,
right.
and what's the one before?
And for the residential, adds up to a little over $400,000.
$400,000.
This is in about 30 months, all right?
So those green rates, are those people who,
Who opted into
We're
the
in-
green.
they were in an SA, a separate program?
Well, they would have had to, all people have to do to opt into the green
Oh, they
is
could, okay.
call us up. So the way the program works, the municipality picks the default. If people take no action, that's the selection you have.
If they
But
take
anybody
an
can call or go on the web at any time and switch to the other product, whichever the
And I
municipality.
think originally when we started, we said that the green you would save, but probably not as much as the standard because of
Right.
the.
There's a difference. It's not huge, but there is a difference there. Yep. Yep. All right, so that's commercial. So now we're going to go into the day-night rate situation here. Just to clarify, day-night rates are a form of time of use rate, so it's the utilities' effort to put a cost on the timing of your usage, because it actually costs a different amount. If during the peak period, they have to start up very expensive peaker plants, they're dirty, they only run some of the time, it's more expensive for them. Or if they exceed certain peak capacities, it's more expensive. So they do have these time of use rates. This is the simplest one. It's a day and a night rate, and the night off-peak rate starts at 11:30 at night and goes until 7 a.m. in the morning, except during daylight savings. It's 12:30 at night to 8 in the morning. There is also another kind of time of use rate. It's a 3-rate version, and it's peak, mid-peak, and off-peak. There's far fewer of those out there. But we're probably going to see more of this in the future rather than less.
Well, Dan, we just had a meeting here the other day with NYSEG, chaired by Councilman Garrity and myself, and they were talking about that as a proposal going up to Public Service Commission to begin the smart metering, or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
which would give an incentive to people to use electricity at the times of day when there is less usage, thereby evening out. And that means there won't be a need for more power plants, so NYSEG wins and the user wins, and that's probably something on the horizon
Yes.
that NYSEG has.
That's right. That's right. So having
Some
those
places
meters-
already have it.
Yeah, that'll facilitate that. Yeah.
I want to say something about the day-night rates. Every customer has the ability to request NYSEG that they want a level rate, they might want a day-night rate. They would come in and they put a meter that can do that.
Right.
I think there's a minimum amount of usage, like, 1,000 kilowatt hours a month in order
I think
to,
it's a year,
a year?
a year.
It's got to be, okay,
I
to
believe,
to
yeah.
essentially be, to have that service. And so
Correct.
it's a personal selection.
That's right.
So, smaller amount of our customer base here in Somers has that type of a service.
Right, right. And as you said, it's largely the townhomes and largely in Heritage Hills. I'm guessing if you call them today, they probably tell you they'd put in one of these advanced meters. If they're going to come out and install something, they'll install this new thing. You know, I don't think these are going to exist too much longer. So at the beginning of the program, there was really no consciousness of this. Day-night was classified just as part of the residential rates. They came into the program a couple months in, just about the time that I got hired on. The people started calling, what's going on? Why am I in this? I don't have the day-night rate anymore. And so we started opting them out. And there was lots of phone calls with
Those are what we
NYSEG.
call growing pains.
That was the biggest growing pain that we had, without a doubt. And there's lots of phone calls with NYSEG, with Constellation, with the supervisors, and basically shy of instigating a contractual issue there wasn't much we could do, except when people called, we opted them out, And so that, there was a few months there where there was quite a bit of activity around that. And we just opted everybody out who wanted out. Now, starting with this new contract, though, and really over the past year or so, there's been dialogue with the Department of Department of Public Service around this, and some of the orders around some of the other CCAs that are now launching elsewhere in the state. They've made it clear that you need to have matching products for the different situations. And so in our discussions with them, we agreed we're not going to include those. And in our discussions with the supervisor, we already had figured that anyway. So we're not including them in the opt-out cohort. That is the group of people who would roll over and automatically be in the program if they don't take action. So instead, we're going to send them a letter that's going to say that you're going to be dropped from the program unless you voluntarily stay in. Now, there could be a couple of situations where somebody would want to do that. First of all, we're going to go out to the bidders for this contract this time and ask them to provide a set of day-night rates. But we're going to get those rates and use them on a voluntary basis. They're not going to be something that, again, we're not going to do the automatic opt-in. I think it's going to be a voluntary thing. But we'll go out with letters to the folks who are in these, have the day-night billing rate class, and say that these rates are available. We'll also tell them that another option is to stay with the fixed single rate, because there are actually, in fact, some people who do better on that. And that's the people who do not shift any of their load to the nighttime. The day-night differential, and we'll see a graph coming up, only works for you if you move some of your load to the nighttime.
Right.
This quickly into the weeds. So having come to this position, and we've gone out and we've got data to help us to remove these people from the roles, we also want to look back and see, okay, what transpired with them. So we don't really have detailed data for the usage for these people for their day and their night periods. But what we did is we found a document on the NYSEG site, which is a typical an average profile for a day-night user. We took that, we applied it to the historical day-night rates so that we could get a blended single rate that we can compare with our rate. In other words, we'd weight those rates. If you use 30 kilowatts in the peak hour and 10 in off-peak, then we could weight the individual rates so we got a single rate, which was the equivalent. And then we were able to compare that with our rate, apply that to the usage, the total usage for those users, and get some savings. This is very, very rough, very crude, but it's a way to try to get a handle on what kind of situation they're in.
And
You
that would
can
also
see-
be a fixed rate all the time, wouldn't vary.
Well, it's a virtual calculation to try
Right, I
and see,
understand.
how much did these folks lose by staying in with our fixed rate instead of had they remained with the utilities day-night rates.
Would vary based upon the time of year. For example, set up there in the summer, it was
Yes.
18% difference, and other
That's right.
times it's
That's right.
larger.
And so-
it just stays as one rate, but averages out all those differences.
Well, we
over
had
the
it month
year.
by month.
Right.
We got a blended rate, but we had it month by
Potential
month.
bid though, right?
That's what I'm asking. Is it a month by month rate, or is it one rate
Yeah,
over
in
the course
fact,
of the year?
let me skip. This is what the day-night rates look like.
So they're
So-
volatile.
Yeah, so the same kind of volatility. The bottom is obviously the off-peak rate. So, you move your load to the nighttime, you do your wash at midnight, you put something on a timer, or do whatever you can, and then you get to enjoy this lower rate. Otherwise, you're in the peak rate. And, oftentimes the peak rate can be quite high. But it does vary over time as well.
The goal is to request a rate in your bid that would be a flat rate in each one of those categories.
So, yeah, and actually, so what I actually suggested to the bidders was looking at this, that they might, you could design these rates with various spreads. You take your total cost and divide it using different algorithms, and so what I told them is, make that spread, go towards the wider rather than the
You need that mic, Dan.
Right. So I said, make that spread, err towards going a little wider, because then at least those customers who make a point of shifting their load will have a clear alternative, and we'll be able to provide a clear benefit to a subset. We'll not get all the folks with day-night meters to come back in, but the folks who are conscious of it and know they should move their load, they could look at this and see, oh, you know what? They could figure out that it's beneficial to them.
And what time, maybe you said I didn't hear, what time does the night rates kick in usually? I'm sorry. What time do the night rates kick in usually?
It's 11:30 at
It's
night.
11:30 at night?
Yeah, so it's
To
pretty
7 in the
significant.
morning, 7:30 in the morning.
I'm sound asleep.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, but
Can't do a wash.
some people put their wash on a timer, or the dryer's on a timer, or these days if you have an electric car, you plug it in and put that on a timer. So and more of this stuff is going to be coming rather than less. It's a way to even out the loads, definitely. So that's where we're going with this. But I did want to show you all that we were looking at this. The folks who stayed in, using this kind of average profile, they're losing money over these 30 months as compared to the folks who were in standard, have a standard billing, who made money. So, they're losing $240 if they fit the average profile. Now, I think this is conservative because the folks who all opted out are probably the ones who know they have this day-night rate and are doing some of this shifting. The other people are probably more likely to be the ones who they just don't know, they don't do it, they're not paying attention, they just moved into a house that happened to have the dual meters, et cetera, et cetera. So it's probably a little better than this, but this is, it's not a pretty situation for them. Interesting thing is, if we look just back 1 year ago at the 2018 situation, they actually made money though. So these day-night rates have been trending upwards. And I think what this could be useful for is it may portend the ability of us to go out and get bids that are competitive with the utility and again, attractive for voluntary coming into the program.
Okay, so needless to say, when we first got into the program, there were no offerings for day-night rates.
That's right.
It was just flat.
Just one flat rate.
Okay.
So people.
Then we learned that we converted everybody to Heritage Chills. They were on day-night rates. This is not helping them. So
Right.
we went back and started having them go back to their suppliers.
But with that, still over 800
Yeah.
accounts still remained that were
So-
day-night.
The new offering, the bid that's going out, you're asking suppliers to come up with a day-night rate.
That's right. And this is a new world for the ESCOs too.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, all the letters that you get in the mail are, they're just for flat rates generally. Flat or a variable rate, but there's no, time of use rates. And so I've been up front with them. I said, you know, you're in this situation with us. We all need to meet this new world and figure this out. And there are, you know, if you again dissect your rate, it's actually made up of a bunch of different components. There's just the pure kilowatt hours, but there's also the capacity loading, and then there's frequency control. There's a bunch of different things that are buried in there, and some of which have a time element to them. And if they're smart, they can go find those elements and design a rate that responds to the day-night differentiation. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to learn. We're going to learn. I say we're going to do it on an opt-in basis, and that's what the DPS wants us to do. They're looking very closely at this as a model for what's going to happen going forward.
Just two questions. One, just generally, what percentage of Somers is on this, on this system?
There,
Or this contract?
here's your number of accounts
3,000?
right here. Yeah, so we got 2,151. Actually, I think there's also a couple hundred of these weird 3-rate accounts that are maybe not in here, but this is roughly it. So you see the day-night, probably when we started, it was a third of the town or something like that. We don't have those original numbers because we didn't know about them
But it's
in
substantial.
the beginning. Yeah.
The other question is on the prior contract, there was an opt-out provision that if you didn't like or weren't happy with what you were experiencing, you could opt out at any time.
Oh yeah. Now
And
that's still the case.
That's still the case.
Yeah, and the program is designed that way. The new contract in Con Ed is still that way. You can opt out at any time, and we haven't negotiated the new contract here yet, but in the Con Ed contract we've got it so that you can opt out, come back in 6 months later at the same rate. So, it's very low risk if you just stay
That's
connected a
important.
little bit.
Thanks.
Yeah. So this is then bringing all that stuff together. It does obviously, the totals that we were reporting before were way too high because of this day-night factor here. So the lesson is standard rates still performing nicely. Day-night obviously remains an issue, and we're working towards new structures for that. And this is reducing to a per account basis. So you'd see the standard rate, folks on the standard rate on a monthly basis, we're saving a little bit over $5. The green rate still saved you money, $3.50. So, at this point, in Con Ed territory, we started out with 4 municipalities that were in the standard rate. Now there's only 2, so 20 out of 22 Con Ed municipalities are all in the green. And in the NYSEG territory, we started with 2 and 2. Poundage came in the green, and Lewisboro just recently in this same meeting just decided to go into the green.
But you're saying we're saving $100 to $156
Over the course of the
over the course-
contract,
over the
right?
course of the contract.
Right.
You don't have any way of knowing how much carbon the green rate saves.
We do.
Uh-huh.
We do. We use the. So we use the. Actually, maybe the best slide was in the beginning here. It was here. Where'd it go? Hold on. Oh, well. I can tell you anyway, it's about, for the, more slide. Right, so that's relative to that small number of kilowatt hours. But for the whole NYSEG territory, it's about 40,000 tons. For the entire program with the Con Ed territory, it was over 400,000 tons. So then, and there's lots of different ways to sort of make that relatable. And the one that I like is with the number of cars off the road, because it's almost equivalent to 1 car per household by doing this. So it's a huge impact, and we know more and more that's something
So
we
Dan,
want
let
to
me ask
achieve.
you, at what point would Somers have to decide whether we're going to put forth the standard or the green rate?
So, really, we can make that decision right after, well, here, I can use this timeline here. So, we've gone out with the bids. We're going to get our bids back on the 21st. And within the next 2 weeks, we have 2 weeks to do post-contract meetings. That's now another obligation that the DPS has rendered unto us. So we have to go around and just, this was, report the results of the bid. But we do want to sign those contracts right after the award because the bidder has made that bid contingent on that amount of load being in there. So they're gonna commit the day of the bid. We're gonna get the bids at 11 a.m. We scramble around. We get the review team looking at it, and during the Con Ed bid, we had one bidder come back and say, our algorithms didn't work. Can we do it again? So we sent out a notice to all the bidders saying we had a request to give another bid. If you want to give another bid, give us one bid. We close it up by 2 o'clock because they have to go to their trading desk and lock it in. So we need to sign those contracts pretty much right afterwards. So ideally, you should, before that time, have authorized the signing of the contract, say contingent on receiving a compliant bid and that type of thing.
But could the selection of the green rate be done on a household basis?
Well, that's always the case. They can change.
So, Rick, I think you were thinking about, we don't make an election at the town level
Yes.
to be green.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yes. No.
can-
Make that the default.
Most of
That's
the
the
most of the
default.
towns are doing that because the fact is that most people don't do anything, right? I mean that's and so if the we want to move as many people into the green as possible and still strive for the best economic benefits, but opting green is the way to do that.
But an individual, if we were to go the other way, an individual can opt green.
You can certainly do that.
Yeah.
You've
and
done
that's-
with the first contract.
Yeah.
And which we did.
But interestingly, you'll notice, when Dan
Right.
had the slide, that 0 of the commercial businesses actually opted out. We're human beings, inertia is kind of how we operate,
I understand.
which is why we encouraged in Con Ed,
Mhm.
the municipalities, if they can, and they feel comfortable doing so, to opt for the renewable. Because trust me, people will call. They're the ones who will call if they don't want to be in the renewable. They'll usually
And
call and say,
we opt those
"We're
down
not
right
doing
away.
that," they can
They're
opt
welcome
for
to do
And the
that.
first time we went for the
Standard.
standard.
The
Standard.
standard.
Correct.
Yeah. Right. So ideally, I mean, if you can make that decision now when you authorize the MOU, then it's out of the way. We don't have a scramble at the last minute.
Does NICEAG offer a green rate as
Yeah.
well?
NICEAG does not. You would go out to the ESCO world to get that.
You go out to the ESCO world to
Yeah.
get that, okay.
They used to offer, again, it was basically a third party, these like wind certificates, and they came in $5 blocks and things like that. But now it would be through an ESCO.
On the
Right.
Yep.
green versus the brown.
So, this is just to give a quick look at the schedule. Even though we had, some number of months before that 5/1 start, it's completely packed. We have to get those 2 meetings done. We get the data has to go back and forth. Then we have that 30-day opt-out period again. So that runs just like it did during the launch. We send out a mailing. We have to tell everybody about the rates, all their different options, how they contact us to opt out. There's a big FAQ in there. So there's a lot of stuff to do in between now and then.
Dan, and on that green rate, just going back to that.
Mhm.
So then whoever wins this contract, the contract's for how long? Again, 2 years, 3 years?
Well, we're going to go out and ask the bidders for 2, 3, and this time even 1, just to see what it looks like, and then we'll judge that. In fact, if I jump, we got some indicative
1, 2, 3.
pricing here, just to see where the market was, and so you notice that there wasn't a huge spread between the different amounts. And in my mind, that 36 is actually kind of attractive to say you're paying $1 million just to lock in for another year and get that security. If we, a lot can happen in a month, but that's what we saw, a few weeks ago when we got
On
that.
the green part, when you're asking for these bids, you are designating, here's what you mean by green, the supply of it, the company then would have to find suppliers, they'd have to get the supply that meets the criteria of being green.
Yes,
Correct.
and those criteria today are set by the Department of State under their environmental disclosure program.
Oh, it's
So
not
what-
your, that's my question, not your criteria.
Yeah, so that's
The
going to be a
state
difference between
I gotcha.
this current contract, where we use the National Green E Renewable Energy Certificate System. But now the DPS has said if you're going to make green claims about your procurement, you have to use the New York State system, which is new and shiny, and they fix everything up. It's called the NIGATS, so you have to buy through that. So our requirement to the bidders is it must be renewable, either solar, hydro, or wind, and at the best price we can get, but it must satisfy the New York State NIGATS requirements.
One of the things people, last time, a little bit of feedback I got, when I asked, well, what do you think about the two rates? How do I know if it's green they're actually doing, or somebody just pocketing the money? But the standards are a state standard.
That's the purpose
So
of
one would
the.
expect that
Yeah.
there's some
That's the
enforcement
entire
of it.
purpose of these renewable energy certificate systems. It's basically accounting. You have to make sure that you're only counting a given megawatt of power once.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the confusing part of it. I mean, there's not enough renewable energy to fully, supply everybody with renewable, so it has to be a proportion. If you're on the other rate, you have a large proportion of hydro, right? New York
New
State is
York
one of
State
the
is about 20%
Right.
renewable, which includes that's mostly hydro, but also some solar and
Right.
wind.
So
About
solar and
20%.
wind, and they've reduced all the coal, and they've backfilled it with, and it's nuclear, right? And then they backfilled it with gas. And so it's a mix. So if you go to
Yeah.
green, question is, I think to your point, is how much of it is.
Well, we're
really
going to
green.
100%. It's most likely going to be hydro, because hydro is the cheapest renewable right now. So in the contract, we have what's essentially known as legacy hydro.
But it's
so-
accounting, you're saying.
Sorry?
But it's accounting?
Well, the renewable energy certificate system is basically a kind of accounting system, because you have to identify a given megawatt of power, track it, its ownership, essentially. So buying power, as I like to say, and I wish I had I do a little sketch, which is basically the grid's a big bucket, right? You don't know whose electrons come out the other end, just like when you pour water and you don't know whose water it is. But the act of buying power is saying who on the pouring end you're going to pay. So
My point is that if I select green, I'm not increasing the green generation in the entire system. Essentially, I'm going to claim a portion of it for me.
you're building market demand. You're paying these legacy suppliers who are not getting NYSERDA Tier 1 support, which the new wind and new solar installations get, which is a high level of support.
It's a bit of a
So it's
division, yeah.
it's part of the whole renewable market. We do care about additionality, and so I will say that this program is a launching pad for a lot of other activity. We're working hard on community solar, is where a lot of the expectations lie today, and we did our first project over in Croton. It's a 150 kilowatt project, not very big, about 30 some odd subscribers there, and those people are actually enjoying an additional discount on their bills, and they have supported the installation of local solar. And we're going to have probably in the next couple of months some offers for the NYSEG area for Somers residents in this area, because there's new plants going in nearby that we can all subscribe to. So we do care about additionality. There is kind of a progression of green to deep green, but it's all contributing to
But it's
getting
basically
to-
supply and demand. Demand drives
Yeah.
supply. The greater the demand,
That's right.
the more that suppliers are incentivized to produce that.
The more you
electricity.
pay the green suppliers, the greener the grid gets.
Right.
So I had a question on page 18 with regard to the numbers.
Yeah, so.
We talked about a couple of years ago, going into this program, that we would guarantee some savings for our bosses, our taxpayers, and this proves that out, which is great. Do we have any comparisons to the projections? What did we estimate we would save people? And what?
If there
compared to
were
these
numbers
numbers?
given, and I wasn't part of the formation team at the time, if they were given, they were probably given as, this is what happened in other states where they did this, and these are the savings that they experienced. And I think they looked at Ohio and a couple other places, and the savings, I think, I remember numbers like 5% or something like that. But hopefully nobody said they're guaranteeing savings,
No.
because it's a fixed rate program, and by definition, we can't
I think they
guarantee
did
against.
exactly what you just said. They came in and said, here's where they've done it before, and
Okay.
here's sort of average savings, and we're hoping to be comparable here, but again,
Yeah.
you never know.
So this is pretty much on track with what, we were hoping and expecting. And honestly, the utility rates have not been seeing the kind of increases that historically they've seen. So even in the face of relatively stable rates, we've eked out a little savings. And even in the towns where we went 100% green, scraped out some savings. So that basically was the goal of the program, and we hit the target on that one, with the exception of the growing pains. So that's the renewal timeline, and this is just to show you what we went through to try and come up with these target rates. Remember, in the MOU, it sets out a not to exceed compliance maximum, just so we know we need to commit up front, because else the bidders are not going to bid. But we don't want to commit to something that we think is not going to perform. So, the original launch used a 12-month trailing average as their target. You had to beat the 12-month trailing average of the utility. So we sliced and diced the historical rates in various ways to just try and get comfortable with it. And you see we have, 3-year trailing, 2-year trailing. We looked at calendar years, and it's all sort of floating back and forth between 7.2 and maximum 7.58 on the residential. And the commercial, it's actually not too much different. And as I say, I showed you the indicative pricing. Now this is without the renewable energy component. This is just the straight pure rate. This is what we just talked about as a reminder that we're purchasing through renewable energy certificates. During the first round, our national RECs came in at something over 0.1 cent a kilowatt hour, quite cheap. The hydropower in our Con Ed bid just now came in at 0.25. It is rising a little bit. The demand is going up. Our expectation is something around 0.3 cents. So again, just to triangulate for that target, we took the indicative, we added the 0.3 expected here, which takes a 24-month price, for example, to 7.2, or a 36 to 7.29. And then we looked at the trailing averages, the 12-month and the 24-month, and we decided, this time, the 24-month is actually a little bit lower, and we said, let's be a little more aggressive on this. It's also a tiny bit under our current green rate of 7.41 cents. So we recommended to go with this 24-month trailing average as the maximum cap, and that's what we're doing. That's what Bedford and Lewisboro and North Salem have signed off on. So that's our recommendation here, and that's how we got to that. So that's the run-up to the MOU.
Does the contract fall within the period that they're going to decommission the nuclear power plant?
Well, 3 years from May and 19 takes us 20, 21, 22.
No.
It's going to be right in the middle of it. So that's an issue. We are working on a bunch of programs to try and speak to that.
I mean, you
And
would
I think the
cost
community
is gonna-
solar piece is going to help. As I said, there's a lot of megawatts of community solar that we're going to bring in. We're going to start with this kind of voluntary subscription process right now. The utilities have been required to come up with what we call a single bill, so that rather than you signing up with a separate developer and having a separate relationship with them, we'll be able to bring that community solar right in through the CCA and basically distribute these credits to everybody. That's everybody's waiting for the utility to fix this. That's obviously, you don't want to hold your breath for that. You know, they push and shove when this stuff happens, but they have been required to do this. That's really where we're headed, is the full integration of local solar into this. And down in Con Ed territory, where they're not going to have enough of this, we're working on potentially having direct contracts with folks up in the north and some of these renewable suppliers. So having this platform allows us to have those discussions and move ahead with this. So.
Okay, Dan, I want to thank you. This is always a learning experience. Now the board has to discuss whether we standard or green. And you're saying the 24-month option is,
I think we're going to decide that when we get the bids in, the 24 or 36. We put a 1 year in there also. It's funny because Warren over there in North Salem calls me and say, how come I'm getting these offers for 6.3 cents a kilowatt hour? I say, yeah, we're not going to get that for a big bulk bid, because what happens with those is those ESCOs will sell you that, because most people sign on and then don't look at it again for the next 3 years. After the end of the term, the 1 year term, your rate starts to drift up. So they know they're going to recoup that later on. But in a program like this, where it's a big bid, you're not going to hit those kind of rates. So, but I'm going to get the 1 year rate just to show Warren that it's not going to be that much different.
okay.
But anyway, so I'll leave it to you folks. Should you approve the MOU, then we'll talk to you very soon to get a copy of that and include that in the RFP. We'll have to send it off to the bidders because they're waiting for it.
That's
Thank you.
actually our next agenda item, so we'll
Okay.
discuss the MOU.
Very good. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll close up shop here. Try not to
Okay.
make too much noise.
All right, so the next item is the authorized supervisor to execute the community waste aggregation MOU with Sustainable Westchester. Thanks, Paul.
Tom got mad, he lost his microphone, so he left.
Yeah, well, yeah, Dan, that was the, good thing you're still here. So this MOU commits us to Community Choice Aggregation Program.
That's right. As long as the bids come in under the target caps.
Okay.
Right, that's the criteria.
Right.
So the bidder knows if they bid under that cap, the best bidder is gonna get the.
And you're going to go to Constellation as well as others.
Oh yeah.
And
Frankly, they won the kind of bid by a tiny fraction
Yes.
over another mega corporation.
so part of the transition issue, because it was a little clumsy when we did this, was the budget aspect of the supply portion of the
Right.
bill, right?
Right.
So if we go with Constellation, I guess all's good, everything will just roll.
Exclude the budget people, they need to volunteer in also, only because, and this is specific to NYSEG, the way NYSEG bills and the way Con Ed bills is different. NYSEG is bill ready, so they send the whole bid in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, why don't you get it, because it's important that they hear you.
Here. Sit down.
Sit down, be supervisor for a while. Go ahead.
Or meeting adjourned. No. No.
Not so fast.
Roland said I
I like that, I like that lean in here, just.
We're going to exclude those from the automatic opt-in as well. It's just, again, particular to NYSEG, the way they bill, it kicks people out of the budget billing so that they have to call up and set up a budget with Constellation, which is doable, but there's some chaos. In Con Ed, that doesn't happen.
But what's gonna happen for us in NYSEG area here?
So we're going to exclude those from the automatic roll-in.
So that would have to be an opt-in on those people's
Yeah.
part. They would
Yeah.
know about the
Yeah.
program. They'd opt in. They wouldn't have a budget.
So what
They would have
happened
to
was
reset their budget.
Yeah, the budgets get reset. The
have to
NYSEG
call.
distribution part automatically got reset, but the energy portion did
Right.
not, and it ended up having two separate budgets.
And
ComEd
of
is
course,
one
I'm sure
budget.
you had the same experience wherever you've been in Lewisboro ever, or wherever, as we've had here of people, companies calling, asking for people's account number, saying that they're whatever. Then they switch the supply.
Right.
And, you know, that is, I don't know if that's illegal.
Yeah,
Sounds fraudulent
that's called
to me.
slamming, and unfortunately, it's one of the reasons why the industry was almost shut down by the DPS at one point, and a lot of lawsuits going back and forth. But it's unfortunately fairly common.
Now, I haven't heard those
A lot
complaints
of
lately.
misrepresentation. Down county, you get a lot of door knocking, and people come with a little tag, and it looks official, but they could be very use very heavy tactics and say, like, you know, you need to make a decision here, or else your power is going to get cut off. And
Oh,
like, and they
wow.
do this with
All right.
seniors. So Virginia and Jenna here make a great point of going to visit senior meetings and how to read your bills. And we're going all around the county trying to help the seniors understand the stuff, so when they get those phone calls, they can defend.
Yeah, a guy down the street from me, they said, just give us your number, you know, we'll get you the,
That's
and he
right.
said, they sounded so real, I gave
Yeah.
him the number.
Yeah.
Dan-
We also make a point of telling people that we will not solicit them.
Right.
They have to call us.
Right.
People say,
Right.
well, what do you mean you don't have our account number? No, you have to give it to us, because
Right.
we don't have that information all the time.
Right.
So
Right,
that's something else.
so the other,
Right.
so the people on budget plans will be opted out.
Right.
People from Heritage Hills that were included in bulk last time will not be included.
Not included.
And then anybody that's opted out in the past will not be included in this outreach.
Okay.
Correct.
But-
Now, but
The budget.
everybody will get letters, and they can, those people who are not already in the program can opt in at the new rates.
Right.
Anyone who opted out last time is also opted out. They'd
Right.
have to opt in now.
Yes.
But I am concerned about the budget aspect of this. I mean, that was a lot of angst, because
Yeah.
people, all of a sudden, they go into the next contract,
Yeah,
and they don't know that they have to
Yeah.
call and say, I want a level budget plan, and all of a sudden, boom, their
Right.
January, February bill's out, and they're,
Right. This is something that
And-
the DPS and the utilities need to work out. It shouldn't be like that, but in NICEAG territory it is, so. we'll have to-
okay.
and there's
just-
nothing we could do about that with NICEAG?
In terms of, yeah, no, it takes NICEAG fixing that, I think, but right now it's,
So Dan, our next item here is to move on the MOU. This commits the town to participate in the Community Choice Aggregation Program, but does not talk about rates or
well, the rates.
Or
should-
years.
It just says, the rates
Oh,
should be-
6,999, right, is a 3-year rate? You're thinking.
Well, there's no rate. It
should
just
be
say
a-
there's a cap.
There should be the cap. The
Right.
cap is sitting there, but
It
we don't
doesn't
know the
commit-
final rates.
It doesn't commit to the green rate, right?
No, that's right.
Not unless we
That's right.
decide
That would
to.
be a separate, you know, when you sign the contract, we would set it up now, actually, before it was in the annexes, I put it right up front in the whereas, where you make a selection. We chose this, you circle it and initial it, just
All
to
right, so
make
this
it
is the
totally clear.
MOU that, once you get the bids back, we get hard numbers, then we sign contracts.
Yes, yes.
But I mean, I think it's important for people to know that, I think it'll be smoother this time than last time, that with this cap, there's a guarantee. We're not saying to the town, yeah, whatever they decide, whatever, we'll pay.
Correct.
You know, it means that there's going to be a savings. We don't know what those savings are, but they will be, the maximum price will be this,
Correct.
but it may be less than that. So this is the minimum savings, there may be more savings.
Yeah, it
And
will
that's what we're
definitely be
committing
less
to.
than that, but how much less?
Right.
And
So-
the other point this time around, there will be a day-night rate that people can opt
Versus-
into.
We're hoping. We
It's a-
made
Yeah,
it, we
yeah,
made it optional, both optional for the customers, right? That would be opt-in, but also we didn't make it a absolute requirement of the bidders because we're not entirely sure
They can
about the
take
market that they can deliver. We told them
All right, so
if
that's
you give it
still-
to us, we will view that favorably in the rating of the bids.
So you have a decision to make then. If one gives you a day-night rate and the other does not, you're going to have to make a decision whether.
Yes.
Will you be able to separate that out from this company will say, we'll take this rate, and for day night, we'll take that company?
No, because
Or
their
it's
bids
gonna
are
be one?
based on a total
Okay.
load, you know, yeah.
Got it.
you know.
Okay, thank you,
All right.
Dan.
Dan, awesome.
Okay, so, I'm gonna make a motion to authorize the supervisor to execute the community choice aggregation MOA with Sustainable Westchester and the ESA in due course, subject to further review and comment by the town's attorney.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Oh, look who dropped
Can we have a discussion maybe about the cannabis project first and then do this?
Talk
have to get out of here?
Oh.
Is that public comment? Or did we do that
No,
already?
that's,
I
that's number
mean,
4.
No,
whatever,
you're
whatever
good?
the board's pleasure is fine with me.
You're fine? Okay. No, we have folks from Partners in Prevention here, so that's fine.
I'm fine, if you want to
Let's
push
do
me, that's fine.
Okay, yeah. You can remain seated there, but,
Down, yeah.
I could just change
okay,
the
I have a
seat
request to move on the agenda, instead of moving on to our town engineer, Joe Barbagallo,
Who we all love.
have our discussion on marijuana legalization versus the prohibition of marijuana sales in the town's neighborhood shopping zones. As we did with vape shops, we kind of jumped out in front to make sure we don't have any vape shops right now. We had a public hearing, we passed a local law, we're prohibiting, you can't open a vape shop. With this news that there's a potential for legalizing marijuana in the state of New York, felt it very timely to have this conversation. I've met with other supervisors, other towns are taking some measures, and so I thought I'd open it up for discussion, what the pleasure of this board would be on this issue.
So what is the issue itself? Is it, can we prevent it if we wanted to? Or if the state comes in and says it's now legal, there's nothing we
We'll
can do?
get our legal opinion first on this.
It's like vaping.
Well, if,
Microphone?
if the state does legalize it, and they don't include an opt-out provision for towns and villages, as they're doing for counties and large cities, then if the board chooses, it should be prepared to enact a law prohibiting the retail sale of what's been legalized.
But that's predicated on the fact that the state allows us to opt out from that state
No.
law.
No, if the state was to allow you to opt out, then it would just be a simple resolution, opting out. And they may do that. I understand there's a big push,
Yeah,
but they haven't done it yet. So if they don't do it, then Somers, if it so chooses, has to be prepared with a local law to enact immediately after it's been legalized, prohibiting the sales in Somers.
So let me just kind of make a couple of remarks, just putting this into context. The governor now has prepared a 100-page document to essentially outline his thoughts about the law. It's written now. You can take a look at that.
It's
He's
gonna
going
pass.
to transition that to the legislature, and they're going to debate this. And if it passes, it'd pass probably around April 1st. At that point, you have to operationalize it. It may take a year to do that. The law, the conversations we have about when I'm talking to folks in the town, there's the concept of decriminalization of it, which essentially says that we're not going to pursue low-level offenses. This is the legalization of cannabis, and when you look at the way he has this outlined in the law, he's creating a cannabis czar. He's regulating distribution, retail, wholesale, agricultural, transportation, and of course, they want to tax that. And so some of the numbers they talk about when this thing gets up and running, maybe there's $300 million of additional tax revenue throughout that system when that takes place. In the law, there's an opt-out, provision that they're talking about, and he's publicly talked about. Right now, it's at the county and large city level, right? And so in theory, We may be able to request Latimer or to say, look, we would like the county to opt out in the good neighbor policy law that he talked about. But and we can also do some things on the zoning side, which we're talking about tonight. And, but it's very likely that this is going to find its way to legalization. 10 states have it. It's on the agenda in a whole bunch of states. And although, there's a lot of reasons why law enforcement and maybe healthcare professionals are very dubious about this, I think we're going to be dealing with it. So,
Well, you have to
What do you think about
separate whether you want the retail sales in your town. You won't be able to prohibit the use of it.
Right.
No.
right, no, not the use of
It's
it. I
just whether or
understand.
not you want the retail
But
stores.
wouldn't it be like vaping, where you can't prohibit it from the sale of any place, but you could prohibit the
Location.
either the location because of whatever zoning,
Oh.
or like vaping, you can't have more than, I think in our code now, it's 51% that is dedicated to vaping. That can't be in.
Well-
Wouldn't it be the same thing as that?
Not necessarily.
Why is that?
I view that as the backup way of doing it.
Yeah.
But what I think is the preferred way of doing it is, even if the state doesn't give us an automatic opt-out, I think the fact that the state has given some people the opt-out allows you to opt out under municipal home rule law with a standalone piece of legislation that prohibits it townwide.
So that would be unlike the vaping because there was not
we
such
had
an
a-
exception to
Right.
state law for
That was
vaping.
only in our neighborhood shopping zone were we able to.
Right.
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 So that's a townwide, would be a townwide ban then?
Right. North Hempstead out on Long Island has already done it. They've already enacted the law.
Wouldn't that be so- it would be
I tend to think they should
challenged
have
in court?
waited until it was legalized. And that's my advice to you is, if you choose to, let's have a standalone law. Have your public hearing on it, be ready to enact it, but don't enact it until after it's been legalized.
So it seems like, it may not prevail, though, if it was challenged. Is that Rich's point?
Well, it would be, wouldn't it, I mean, someone could challenge that, correct?
Right, and if it's challenged and we're defeated, then you go to your zoning
Yeah.
and you
But-
you do it that way.
So, but what's happening here, though, is outside, your prohibited area for, let's say, a marijuana dispensary, because that's how they're going to distribute this, you can go to next door or go to another state or go to another town, and essentially,
Oh, that's
it's
what's
going to
happening,
be, it's going to be
Just like
legal.
vaping.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But here,
And I think this discussion is predicated on the fact that, in my mind, marijuana is a gateway drug. Last year, the governor felt it was a gateway drug, but now it's being considered
Amazing what
legalized.
300 million can do.
so,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
And we have recommendations from the partisan prevention. Some members are here. They're saying they looked at what other states who've legalized it have experienced. Higher rates of marijuana-related driving fatalities, more marijuana-related emergency room visits, expansion of a lucrative criminal market around it, increase in marijuana-related crimes and juvenile offenses, increases in workplace problems, including labor shortages. For every dollar of revenue, there are at least $4 of cost associated with marijuana legalization. And their recommendation is petition, talk to the governor about doing some more studies. Yeah, that movement is well underway. Now on our home rule basis,
Yeah.
I think this is the time to have the discussion, if we're all in like mind that,
You could argue, I've heard these statistics, and you can make that argument either side. I don't think that maybe there will never be enough evidence. I don't think that has been made. On my personal point, my whole life basically has been working with high school kids. When I would look out, I'd see that change in behavior. I'd see the difference in the eyes. You knew what was going on. It would break your heart. And I don't know if I know some say it's a gateway drug. The chief says that. And some people do, some people don't. I know the arguments. I've had them with many times with people, but I like vaping. I would favor anything that would at least help keep it out of the hands of younger people. Now, I know that the law will be written so it'll be 21. I have my own, and then there's a discussion about where you're going to sell it. Those who run liquor stores, they should be sold out of there where there's greater regulation. Others say be sold everywhere. Why should you keep us out of the discussion? What I really don't like about the discussion is when they start talking, the reason you should legalize it is because you can make more tax money on it. And that just really rankles me. That's the reason? I don't think
Rankles
so.
me too.
That really gets me there. And anyone who makes that is the argument, I just kind of lose a little respect for them.
So when my office has concern from our partners in prevention, our town police and police associations
Healthcare
voice their opinions about this. As a town board, I think we're mandated to take some type of action.
I can't see it being a benefit to the town to have smoke shops or whatever in the town. I just can't see that as a benefit. And having seen kids for 40 years still working in a high school, it's something that it bothers me a lot.
The supervisor just said it's got a negative 400% return.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics. There is an argument on the other side, I'm sure, about that in terms of tax money and all that. So
this is the way I think
I'm
about
not in
it.
favor of it.
Yeah, this is the way I think about it. When we have a situation right now where it's prevalent, right?
Oh,
And we don't want to allocate resources for kids and whatever that have small offenses. But when you look at this plan, I mean, this is a marketing plan. I mean, when you talk about retail, wholesale, distribution, agriculture, and the like, we're going to have a stimulation, and that's what we're dealing with. I'm not going to get into the debate whether it's a gateway drug or not. We don't know.
I don't know.
The other thing is the argument about the legal framework of it. If you look at the law, it creates a legal framework for the distribution, agricultural, wholesale, and distribution of this. If you operate outside that legal framework, there's going to be fines, there's going to be jail time, there's going to be decisions about legal sanctions for people that do that. And so unless you're buying the substance through the legal channels, there's always going to be somebody on the side who's going to try to accelerate it by mixing this with that and whatever. And it's still going to be around, and there's still going to be arrests and judicial work done to keep this in the structure.
Driving while impaired in Colorado, I know they talk about that's very difficult, where with alcohol it's pretty easy to do a field sobriety test, very difficult with marijuana.
So I
Do
call
that field sobriety test.
my nephew. He's a police officer in Colorado,
Oh.
and what he said about the field sobriety test, he says, it will tell you that you're on the substance, but there's no degree of impairment. So you can't. He said when you're trying to develop a DWI for somebody you pull over that you suspect is on a substance like this, it's very hard to prove, and in the document it becomes the subjective issues of what you saw, what you smell, how they behaved, and that I think you're right. I mean, that just it makes it more complicated.
I worry about this effect on kids. I know the argument is about alcohol and that's available and this isn't any different. And I've never smoked anything, so maybe I'm not the person who should weigh in on this, but I've seen a lot of kids and I talk to them now about it. And you look at these high school kids and you go, look, your life will be better if you don't smoke cigarettes, if you don't drink a lot, and if you don't use drugs. And look, we have a problem with illegal drugs. And we talk about OxyContin and all that comes out of this prescriptions. We got a legal drug problem, and we have an illegal drug problem, so we got a lot of drug problems, and I don't want to add to them.
Yeah.
If I can do
All
it.
right, so if it's the pleasure of the board, we'll go with our town attorney's recommendation to prohibit the sale within townwide. And we can draft some legislation. We'll set a public hearing March 7th.
Sure.
Is
Okay.
that,
Do we get
give us enough
a
time?
motion and a second on that, I guess?
Yeah, I'll
How
make
does
a
that work,
motion.
Chick? And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, is there anyone else here on this issue wanted to make a comment? I don't think you needed to convince this board, but you were.
And there are people with different opinions. I know last election day I was up at Heritage Hills, an older woman there, certainly my age or older, said, as if I know the governor, the next time you see the governor, you tell him to legalize marijuana, because I'm telling you, it's the best thing in the world, and it's helped my life tremendously. I mean, there are people who believe that, and
Well,
obviously
you
it
know,
might be true.
I would say that
So, and maybe that's the thing.
medical marijuana is legal.
Yeah, I've become convinced that that's probably.
Well, it is legal,
Yeah.
and there are therapeutic
Yeah.
benefits of using that. Doesn't mean you're smoking and
Right.
getting high, but there are therapeutic benefits.
Yes, yes.
The debate always comes when you use a therapeutic argument to justify a recreational event, and then you go down
I
and
think
you
in
spend.
California, it's like, yeah, man, it's therapeutic.
Okay. Well, thank you, and I'm glad we are of a like mind on this issue.
Thank you, Partners in Prevention, for being here.
And
Thank you.
thank you for your recommendation, and I want to thank the chief of police as well for giving his recommendation. So, in keeping with our police force and our Partners in Prevention, set it for public hearing.
Thank you, and thank you.
Okay, at long last.
Hey, no problem, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
No problem.
Oh, yeah.
Well, good evening. I circulated, or I believe you've been circulated the presentation, although I did bring extra copies if somebody
Oh, I
didn't
have
have.
it here, but I'll take it there. Thank you.
One. No. Need one too? Rick, do you need one or do you have?
No, I have one.
Okay.
Better
Sure.
have one.
And Tom doesn't look like he has anything in front of him, so you can put that in front of Tom. So I wanted to get together and give an update on, Rick and I have had some pretty good meetings, I would say, over the last couple months here. I wanted to give you an update on where we are with those and what we've done and kind of some activities that have been going on. I think what's really important is to us to start talking about the next steps and how we're going to proceed. And I'd like to facilitate a conversation about that this evening. So moving on to the first slide, just to give an update on the, we all know that there's money sitting in a bucket down in Westchester County since 1997, of which $10 million has been earmarked for the town of Somers. That money has been accessed by various municipalities in the county over time. It's gained interest. That interest has been spent on certain items. We've received items like we've received some money along the ways for water quality improvement programs for all the GIS work that the town did, $312,000 years ago. Study that we did on the Lake Shenorock, original sewer work that we did. That was a study that came out of that money. There's $31 million still remaining in that fund, and they're looking at it. That's the number that we had at the time, but I know, both Rick and Warren Lucas were kind of pushing to, hey, go and look at that because we think that you might be tapping into that fund for money that may not be directly connected to its purpose, right? So we'll just use the numbers we talked about in the meeting, knowing that they're ballpark. So prior to a meeting that was on January 15th, there was a request from Westchester County and Rick as the chair of the Northern Westchester Watershed Coalition for municipalities to submit their requests for projects, right? To formally start getting an accounting of all of the needs in Westchester for sewer projects and water quality improvement projects. Before I move forward on that, I'll just say this meeting was a follow-up. This meeting on January 15th was a follow-up to a pretty major meeting we had down at the county, where probably almost all 19 supervisors were there. We had the county executive, we had chief of staff, a number of legislators, including, our legislators
Mike
were there. Mike
Kaplowitz
Kaplowitz
and
was there, as well as
Kitley
Kitley Koval were both there, as well as other legislators were there. It was a really good meeting, and out of that meeting, one of the action items was, besides us all talking about our projects and kind of airing a little bit of our, frustrations with funding and DEP, there was a decision that says, okay, NWWC, you guys get together, you vote on projects, we'll start allocating money, and we'll be your advocate, right, with the DEP to try to get some more money, right? So we proposed, as part of going back now to the January 15th meeting, we proposed on January 12th 3 separate projects and identified 3 separate projects in the town. So project one is the one that we've been talking about, which is the base infrastructure in Lake Shenorock and Lake Lincolndale that would connect 119 homes and leverage the $10 million funding request. That's the project one that we've been talking about all along. Base infrastructure in both Lincolndale and Shenorock, which would serve as phase one of a larger sewer projects that would be implemented in both of those communities at some point in the future. That's what we identified. Then we said, okay, if you're going to tell us that you're going to go and advocate with the DEP to get us more money, let's put our other needs on the
Yeah,
table.
so that was something else that came up, basically after that meeting, where the county executive said, or maybe during that.
It was during
meeting.
that meeting, yeah.
So he said, the DP's stance was, okay, we allocated this money back in 1997. You still have $30 million sitting there. We don't want to allocate any more money to this issue until you deplete those funds. So, Somers, we've been talking about Lincolndale and Shenorock sewering for 3 years here. And the county executive said, not only do we want you to come up with projects to spend this money so we can then turn to DEP and say, okay, our coffers are empty. I want to go back to the city and say, look, it's going to cost X amount of dollars more to actually protect your water supply. So, what Joe's going to get into is, yeah, we pass resolutions, we're on the $10 million, we're going to spend that down, if the Board of Legislature has to allocate it. But on top of that is where our big ask for our town of Somers, and believe me, Bedford came in with one, North Salem has one, Yorktown has one. So I just thought I'd predicate it. So we really want to put the county executive in a position where, here's what Somers could use if you really want us to protect your water supply to the best possible ability. This is what we need. So.
Right, so the second project that we proposed as part of this additional money request was finishing Shenorock, right? We've already got some of the base mapping done that we've done as part of the $100,000 study. We know what we want to do. So it's saying, all right, we would like an extra $31 million to do that project, finish off Lake Lincolndale, Lake Shenorock. And then we added a third project, was to finish off Lincolndale and add Purdy's. Now, we didn't specifically call out as part of the funding request the fact that this would include the Business Historic District, but the pipe has to run right through the Business Historic District from Purdy's to get to the Heritage Hills, right? So this would also include, but that's not a water quality project, so that's why we didn't put it forth in that way. But just recognize that as we put in Purdy's, one of the options, especially if somebody's paying for the pipe, is to run it right down. I mean, of course, we could go through the back maybe if we wanted to just do it that way, but we could also run it down the public roads and get the entire historic district
Collateral
connected.
benefits.
Yes. So those are the three projects that we put forward. When you look at it all in total, it's about 1,200 homes that we're talking about connecting in the town through the 3 lake communities when this is all said and done. So that was what we put forth. Now, as Rick said, we weren't the only ones who put forth additional projects above our allocations. There were a total of $167 million in requests made by the NWWC communities, and as I said, there's only about $31 million left, right? So this is where the NWWC and the Westchester County are going to seek additional funding to support the program through the DEP, and that's what Rick explained, the genesis of that. So at our January 15th meeting, there were 3 resolutions passed. Resolution number 1 was to allocate $10 million each towards Somers, Yorktown, Newcastle, with any remaining funds from the initial allocation towards Mount Kisco, who had some needs on a pump station.
There's nothing new about that. That's the same money that was
Right.
Correct.
allocated.
But now well, I'll talk a little bit more as we get through this. It is the same money,
Right.
but there are more eyes and more hands looking to get their hands on that money now, right? And we'll talk about that as we get through this, right? So also there was an identification of an additional 132 million long-range need, and asked the county to seek funding from the DEP. So that was resolution number 2. And resolution number 3 approved 175,000 each to Somers and Lewisboro for water quality projects. So for us, that's going to go towards the salt shed, salt processing facility at the highway department that we've spoken about previously. You know, I added this last bullet because one of the things that was referenced by more than one of the NWWC members is kind of getting, and it's really connected to, or the leader of this sentiment was somebody who's already spent their money, right, and has other projects that they want to do, and they're like, so I want to do other projects. We can't get access to other projects because the towns that had earmarks aren't spending them, and we got to get some progress going here, right? So there's kind of this sentiment building that is, let's get this money spent so that the activities that Rick is talking about can happen, as well as, just so we all are, understand the full picture, is as long as that money is sitting there, it's challenging the funding of the stormwater programs through the EOHWC, which is other buckets of money that the DEP usually funds to fund the stormwater retrofit projects, especially outside of the filtration avoidance basins, right? Which
Well,
we're
what's the
not in.
rationale there? Like, this money's sitting there, if you people needed it, you would have used it, so.
Well, basically what they're
let's
saying
just use
is
it-
the same sentiment, which is, we've given you all this money, you haven't used it, why
Right,
would I give you any more?
Right, I got
If
you.
you haven't used that money, put it into this other program, right? And we're like, whoa, 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 we still
Yeah.
have these projects we
Right,
gotta
right,
do,
right,
right?
right.
So I just think we should be aware of that sentiment that is building, right? So I think that, now, one of the challenges that we've had along the way of, Rick said it's been 3 years since we've talking about this, right? Because the Shenorock project is linked, we have to get the county to, the Board of Legislators to allow Shenorock into the Peekskill Hollow
Right.
Sewer District, right? And that's been a hangup for we spoke to the legislators 8 months ago. And, not much happened. Now we're supposed to get us stuff. Then we have a meeting, and then, okay, the story changes. Give us something else. And it just is clear that this is, and even Norma was not overly committed in the meeting towards any timeline to getting this done quickly. So my point is right now we
What's
have.
their rationale? Too much is coming from Somers, they call it the
There's a-
effluent from the affluent.
It's part of that. It's absolutely a political issue. There's absolutely a run from all the municipalities towards the capacity that's remaining in Peekskill. What we have going for us is when the Preserves project was approved and the pump station was installed and that wastewater pumped over to Peekskill, that was designed to accommodate Shenorock and Lincolndale. So the original concepts were that Shenorock, Lincolndale, and everything on Route 6 that we're already sending was all going to be going to Peekskill. That doesn't, just because it was originally conceived that way, the board still needs to vote every time something's coming in, and obviously at that point, politics get involved, right?
Well, it's
So,
a strong argument.
yeah. We have a strong argument on our
right.
side, and
That
our
was the
argument
original
is
design.
strengthened. Our argument is strengthened by the commitment to remove Lincolndale from the flow that was originally contemplated to go to Peekskill and send it to Heritage Hills. That's 91,000 gallons a day that was originally planned to go to Peekskill that we're saying will treat it Heritage. So that was a big point for Legislator Koval to hear us removing that flow from
Oh, I got you.
from the flow to Peekskill and treating it in town. So all that are good facts in our direction, but we still require an act of the board of legislators. So we could, I think, as we look at the decisions we need to make, and we look at both near-term and long-term options, that should be, I think, is a critical data point that we should be contemplating as we go through this, right? So I think as we look in the near term, now that the 10 million is allocated, I think we need to discuss what path do we want to move forward on that, and we'll talk about that next. And then on the longer term, the town to consider initiating work on the sewer projects in Lake Shenorock, Lake Lincolndale, Purdy's, and the business district to advance those projects to position the town for future funding cycles, right? So this is starting to get to the point of, because you got to remember, in the backdrop here, we have Heritage Hills treatment plant that has 400,000 gallons in capacity that the town board just recently defended that capacity being sold out of county and out of town. And we had a meeting, both Rick, myself, and Tom had a meeting with and you were there too, I think, right? Yeah, and we had a meeting with Heritage Hills, and they're very anxious to lock
Sure.
the town? Are you going to use this capacity or not? When are you going to use it? Where's it going? Because
That's money.
they want because if they're not going to sell it to us, they want to sell it to somebody else,
They
right?
want the commitment.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So this long term is really connected to the Heritage Hills locking up that capacity as well, right? As well as getting grant money. So those are the two things that I wanted to talk about this evening. So moving to the near term allocation, I really think see three options, right? So option one is we can wait for the BOL. Leave project one the way it's defined, base infrastructure, Shenorock and Lincolndale. Just sit tight until the BOL approves, and then we move that project forward as we've defined it to install the base infrastructure in those two communities, right? The risk is that an extended process, right, results in us not being able to show much progress in the content of that sentiment of the NWWC, and that others start coming after that $10 million, and at some point maybe we lose that $10 million. So I think that is the risk. I think we have a very strong chair of the NWWC, who I'm sure would be an advocate for Somers never losing that money. But there is a voting board, and there seemed to be a sentiment building that, we could lose that money. So the risk of waiting for the BOL would be a
Right.
potential to
Well,
lose
we're
that
not
money.
going to, the Northern Westchester Watershed Committee, which funnels requests to the county, has approved
Correct.
our $10 million. Matter of fact, that this was the second resolution approving it.
Right.
Now it's down with the county planning department, who then goes through the validity of these proposals. And the question of the budget of $30 million. I mean, there's more requests than $30 million. So I want to get down, and we're going to do some forensic accounting on that money that the county's had all these years to find out, at one point it was up to $63 million.
Well, it started at 50. There was, I think if I looked at it right, there was accumulated over $30 million in interest, and there's only $30 million left, but we only spent like 30, the math just doesn't seem to add up, right?
Right. Well, look,
Do you challenge that legally?
No. I just think that it's not clear in the documentation after giving where all the money went. It's not. I'm not claiming anything nefarious. So I don't want to leave that impression. But
so this committee gets administrative support from the planning department. And, the Westchester County Health Department does, they run programs that have to do with water quality and sewer pump outs and things like that. So that's what I'm suspecting some of these monies went to, which is, it's all above and beyond board, but we want to make sure. At that meeting that we were talking about where we did these resolutions, the county planning department came with they wanted to do a countywide septic system repair program for $3.5 million. And the committee looked at each other and said, well, wait a minute. We have a $10 million project in Yorktown. Somers has one. Newcastle has one.
Mount
We
Kisco
want to
has
use the
needs.
funds,
Yeah.
and Mount Kisco could use additional funding. So we did not move on the county's request. So the
That
gloves
gives them
are
an
coming. The
incentive to
gloves
go
are coming
find us some
off.
money.
We're gonna do what we can to, look. I'm interested in making sure Somers locks up their $10 million.
Right.
Can
Well, I
we
worked on
use?
2 projects where 20 million was used, Quarry Heights and Peach Lake.
Right.
So there's 20 million right there.
Right.
So it goes quick.
Those are the two that were of the big projects of the initial $50 million allocation that was spent.
Can we use this $10 million to lock in the capacity?
No. This is for construction of. So we can't use it to lock in. At the time, like
It's all part of the
So,
same thing.
so as we lock in Lincolndale as part of installing the pipes in Lincolndale, we can use this money to pay for the capacity in Lincolndale for the portions that we're building. But we can't use the $10 million to lock up capacity for the future in Purdy's when there's no actual
There's no
infrastructure
plan.
going in to actually have the improvements.
But you
Right,
can
and
do it
that's
for
the-
Shenorock.
Shenorock is going to Peekskill. It's not going there.
Didn't we just say that we're,
No,
you were
no,
gonna-
Shen-
which part-
Lincolndale.
Lincolndale was
yeah.
going to.
Lincolndale, we could use the $10 million to pay for Lincolndale.
Yeah, and so.
For the
I mean,
portions that we're building, and maybe if we or, do move in the direction that we're suggesting of doing the entire plan, map, and report, yeah, maybe we could start using that to lock up some, but I think you would
It's not
lock it up
avoid
I think
taking-
you would lock it up in a contract capacity. I think what's ultimately gonna be most economical for the town to get the most infrastructure for the dollar. I mean, you don't wanna throw $2 million and put it in Heritage's bank account. I'd rather put $2 million into pipe.
No, but I
right,
don't-
and
I don't
and
want-
lock
I don't-
up their capacity contractually in a different way.
But I would not like to find myself having to float a bond to lock up that capacity.
Right. I think that my suspicion from that meeting is, I think we need a follow-up meeting with them. But my suspicion is that we could lock up that capacity with a commitment over a certain time period without having to buy all the capacity up front. I think there might be an initial payment that they're looking for, and then a commitment to, hey, 2 years from now, we're gonna tie in the rest of Lincolndale, and this is what that is, and 2
I would
more
agree
years
with
after
you.
that, we're gonna tie in this, and 2 more years, right, you were out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would
Remember as well, whatever you bond, first you're going to have to form a sewer district.
Right.
And
Right.
only those taxpayers are gonna pay for the bond. It's
Right.
not gonna be a town-wide
Right.
indebtedness.
No, I understand, but I still want to keep the debt down as low as possible. I want to you want to try to lock that up there, and I'd like to do that with grant money.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
that's-
and so, you're trying to move all these parts at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a sequence here.
Yeah. So let me just keep going through this, right? So the second option, of course, is let's just move forward, right? With Project 1 is defined, knowing that if the BOL doesn't let the town in, you might be spending money that you're not going to get reimbursed, right? This money can go for infrastructure that's constructed, and all the fees, the soft costs associated with that, but the soft costs only become eligible in the event that construction actually happens. In other words, they're not going to give you money to pay for us to design a system in Shenorock and then it never gets built, right? So that's the risk of moving forward with Project 1 is defined is if it takes 3 years for the BOL to let us in, or you're proceeding at a certain percentage at risk there, right?
You're going to let us in.
And then the third option, right? The third option is remove the risk of Shenorock, separate the projects, and let's look at Lincolndale and start developing plan maps and reports on Lincolndale and start moving forward with Lincolndale because we know capacity, we have capacity. Take the certain portion that we were planning to put into Lincolndale, leverage it through the CFA process in the spring and the WIA process in the fall into as much money as we can. So basically scale. Right now, it's about 2/3, 1/3 Shenorock, Lincolndale. Maybe you got to look at those percentages to make sure we can maximize grant funding through CFA, which is the WQIP state program, and the Water Infrastructure Act, which is in September, and look to get money. I think we would be successful. I'm very confident we'd be successful in Shenorock because they've already started giving us money on the stormwater project to improve water quality there.
Yeah.
Lincolndale, I also think would be successful because there's the added benefit of public health, right, in Lincolndale because of the density of the drinking water wells that exist in Lincolndale. There's both septic and there's no public water in Lincolndale,
Right.
where there's public water in Shenorock, right? So the density of the septic systems
To the wells.
to the wells does pose a risk that doesn't exist in Shenorock. I'm not suggesting that the water, but over time it's a risk, right?
Right,
So
so-
I think that's going to work toward benefit towards these
Right,
grant
I think I
applications.
finally have this down. EPA states roughly that within a 1 square mile, which Lincolndale is, 44 septic systems are considered high density. There are,
Whatever the number was.
360
That's what I have here.
Capelli.
yeah. So it's not a matter of when the septic systems are gonna fail, when the groundwater is gonna be affected. It's,
It is being affected.
when.
It's when it is, and there's a
It's
lot
not
of
if, it's
statistics.
when.
It's not if, it's when. Right. And there's a lot of statistics on
Not
that.
when, it's when.
Right.
And especially with
when
new
is
emerging
soon.
contaminants popping up all the time, there's, my world, I'm dealing a lot with PFAS now and all these other new contaminants that are coming up, and it's just something to be aware of. I think it helps us. With our grant applications. So I think those are really the three options right now. Sit tight, wait for the BOL to move Project 1 forward. Number as defined. Option 2. Move Project 1 forward at risk, knowing if the BOL doesn't let us in, you're putting money at risk on the engineering side. Or number 3, let's just focus in on what we know, which is we're clear to go on Lincolndale. We've got the money allocated. Let's move forward and put ourselves in a position to get grant funding for Lincolndale, right? And I think that those are really our three options for the 10 million. And one of the other things I just want to say, because we are in a fortunate position that we work in this program for other towns besides Somers, and what we're seeing is, and this is why I'm concerned, is that the other towns are moving very aggressively to get their plans and their specs and their documents done, because this sentiment that's growing, could easily lead towards those who are ready is where the money's going to go. And that's why I pose this as a risk for the wait and see portion, that that I wouldn't want to see us lose out on that money. So,
We don't have any timetable when the Board of Legislators would act on that. We've been waiting for.
I think that,
years.
there could be a concerted effort amongst this board, right, and others to
let's
contact
do it.
those, and let's drive it. And I think
Have we discussed that with Mike?
Just so you know, I think we
Kaplitz?
should absolutely, regardless of which option we choose here, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we got to keep pushing on that, right? We got to keep pushing on that
and-
regardless of what option we move forward. It's just whether you want to wait for the vote, go at risk, or let's do something that is fully within our control with the disposal capacity lined up and try to take advantage in this year to get as much money as we can to do as much of that project as possible.
Did Mike offer any insight or recommendation?
Yeah, well, we met with Mike and Kitley on the issue, and part of the momentum was getting our projects approved by the Northern Westchester Watershed Committee, and then getting it down to the county. So right now, these three projects that we started with are down in the planning. Goes from planning to the BOL. I guess my job at this point is, when I've been talking to Norma once a week, let's look at the budget and let's get this allocation done. I mean, Somers,
Right.
and
I think that's what she's spoken. When I spoke to her on the 15th, and I asked her, hey, when do you think we can start talking to the BOL? I'm trying to get a sense. She said, Joe, I just got all these requests. It's going to take me time just to get my arms around these requests, and that's the work that Rick is talking about. So I think there absolutely needs to be a continuous kind of push on the BOL, right? And maybe you get a sense
well,
that
it would be push on the planning department
right
to get it to the
to BOL, correct. And I think once it gets there, there's going to be a conversation, right? I think we'll get support. It seemed to me that we'll get support from Mike. It seemed that Kitley was kind of getting a sense, but I also think that she was.
Mike's behind it, yeah.
No, she
was very supportive of the fact that, and thought it was very positive that we removed Lincolndale from the flow, showing we were making a good faith effort to minimize what we're sending, even though we had the authority to do more.
Right.
So I felt good about the conversations, but we've been talking about this for so long. I don't know how long
yeah.
it's going to take, and I would hate to see the town lose its
Please.
Is he gone at the end of this year?
Yes.
Yeah, so Mike's gone after this
Right,
year.
right.
So if it's not done this year, you start with a whole new legislature again, legislator. So.
No,
And a new rep.
our best chance is
20 years, he has some
getting it
clout.
done this year, and that's my goal.
Definitely.
So I think that those are the three options that we should be looking at for the near term, for the $10 million. So I'm not suggesting that the board has to make a decision now. I'm sure you want to contemplate this, right? I'm happy to come back next week to talk, or next month, whatever, if there's any additional questions. But I think that's really what we're looking at.
Yeah, well, I mean, one man's opinion, option one, that's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm trying to get the equip budget worked out with Norma. So once we know where those dollars are, if there is $30 million, well, you have three viable projects for $30 million, Newcastle, Yorktown, and Somers. I mean, and are we ready to go with our studies and things like that when it goes to the BOL?
I have submitted all the documentation. I have had no subsequent requests from Millie for any additional information. She asked me one question. I got back to her very quickly, and I haven't had another request from her, so I'm suspicious that we have everything. But I get a sense there's going to be two actions at the BOL. First is going to be to approve the allocation of the $10 million, right? And then the second's got to be to let us in the sewer district. And I don't know the timing of those two things. And just keep in mind if
I'm thinking simultaneously.
I would,
They should-
option one, just so the board's fully aware, is that if we go option one, we're likely going to, unless we're proceeding on some portion of the work at risk, we're likely to miss the grant funding cycles for this year, because it takes time to pull together the plan, map, and report, for example, which is the basis of those, will be the basis of those funding requests, you know, through.
And performing a district.
Right. But in order to apply for WIA, for example, we've got to, by the time we get to September, we got to be through SECR if we're going to want to get money through WIA, right? So waiting too long, that's fine. It's just we're going to miss this year from being able to leverage any county money into more money. And that's what I think is my recommendation is, regardless of what we do, we should try to turn this 10 million into 20 million by leveraging it through other state programs.
But what do we expect from the county in terms of authorizing entry into Peekskill? We haven't petitioned. You
No,
know,
that is-
when Carney's projects got into Peekskill along Route 6, we had to submit a written petition explaining the reason.
Right, so
Something that the board could act on, that the Board of Legislators. That's not in place.
No, well, we can't petition to get in there unless we have a project to get the sewage over there. So, yeah, the allocation of $10 million has to happen first.
Right. But they're not gonna authorize Peekskill at the same time. They may authorize the 10 million.
And
but
then there's
I
a
would think
process.
They may whisper to you, okay, give us a petition, but
Well-
then we have to do that.
So we get to 10 million, we start getting the information we need, and then we put the petition in once we have.
Well, I think we probably have enough stuff for the petition. I just think
Yeah.
it's time is what we're talking about. We're talking about potentially
Well,
time.
let's get the petition ready.
But the petition may politically push decisions in the other direction, say, well, gee, you know, I don't want this capacity here, I don't want to give you
You
the 10
gotta
million.
make sure you have your ducks lined up
Right.
before you
You
submit.
know,
That's-
you want to make sure you
you know,
secure
That's
the
why
10
I'm
million.
trying to lay out these.
Carney knew
Right.
when we submitted that petition, he knew the ducks were in line because of the affordable component, that it was gonna
Well,
be
you know,
approved.
and I think that's a key right there, Roland. I mean, the town of Somers contributed 22%
Of the
of
settlement.
affordable units
Yeah, I mean,
for
that's gotta be
their
big.
federal lawsuit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
huge.
So that's
That's huge.
just
But that may
something I
not help
really,
us on this one.
I really think,
Help us on that one. Well, it's kind of
Well, they help us
payback.
on
I mean,
that
it's
one. They
a
wanted to do
favor,
it
you
to
know.
us because
That's
we were
what I'm
up-
saying,
But the
right.
fact that we did 22%
Well, you'd hope
means
they
that there
would
should be some good faith
keep
there.
us in mind, right? But
so,
maybe.
so, you know, those are the three options, right? Do we wait? Do we go at risk, or do we just dump, you know, focus in on one of the two communities and get those moving while we're waiting for the other ducks? And I think that that's what the board should consider.
You need to do it.
All right?
I read
But-
an,
but-
I saw an article that Lewisboro, was it Lewisboro? Bedford. I mean, they're building, you know, planning a big sewer project.
Yeah.
Is that competing for this money?
They've already got their $10 million, but believe me, they've got part of that $165 million, Bedford put in their money. I know, because, you know, we're working with Bedford, right? They're putting in big chunks of money as well, just like we did. I mean, we made sure that, you know, our clients were best served by putting in the big request. And I think the Yorktown was another one who put in a $30 million project as well.
Joe.
There's a lot of sewer work going on in northern Westchester right now.
Here's what, what you just said basically is, you know, do we start on one of the options is to start on a project and hold off on the other one. My concern is if that happens, there's no guarantee that the second project will get money for it.
well.
That there's no guarantee that they will get money. Well, I'm not suggesting. Let's say we move forward with Lincolndale. I'm not suggesting we put the entire 10 million in Lincolndale. What I'm saying is right now,
just change the ratio.
right now I'm saying it's 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 Shenorock,
Shenorock.
1/3. What I would want to do is maybe look at it and say, all right, looking at this grant program, you know, it's a 50% match, and this grant program is this kind of a match, and starting to look at, hey, maybe if we can get up to a 50% match up to 5 million, or 100%, 75% match up to 5 million, there might be a benefit to having a $7 million project, because now you get eligible for 5. If you make it a $5 million project, you're only going to be eligible for 3.5, right? So I think that we would have to work through those details as to how much would we want to pursue in any one community, but it wouldn't use all the money. I
Okay,
mean,
I just wanna
we
make-
could choose to do that. Maybe you see things going south at the BOL, and you say, you know what, let's just put all the money into this community.
I don't think, I don't think you'd want to say, hey, let's put it all at Lincolndale and, I mean, we've been talking with Shenrock
Yeah,
for a long time.
absolutely.
That's my concern.
Right.
Well, I think that we would never put all the money in one community. We might look at the ratio of 2/3, 1/3, and maybe try to maximize some of the
Have we
benefits.
spoken to our grant writers about possible programs and which one,
Well, I've spoken.
how we spend the money might determine the possibility of getting more money on certain
Yep,
other
we've
grants?
historically spoken to them. We haven't gotten to them on this detail. I have my grant team, which I know what these percentages are because we just went through it. These are the right programs. I wanted to have this meeting, and then I think as we're sizing the project is what.
I would still look at
No, they're great. They're very good, and obviously
That's
we'd be
the-
working very closely with them on this.
30 years,
We'd be working very closely with them
Please.
on this. So those are, that's the near term to think about. And then on the longer term side is, the longer term side is looking at this is really turning towards the other capacity, locking up the rest of Heritage Hills, starting to develop the information that allows us to start pursuing a routine of, let's get, this would be starting to look at what does it look like to do Purdy's, right? And how would we get the pipe? How many houses? What would it look like to do the rest of Lincolndale, right? We have the entirety of Shenorock mapped out, but we've only looked at the base infrastructure in Lincolndale. So the long term is to look at, well, it's probably easiest to go through this approach, is that if you were gonna break it out by community, what that sequence would look like and over what time period. And that's another thing for the board to think about, right? I've laid out a schedule here to get all 3 communities sewered by 2024. Okay? So over the next, whatever that is, 6 years, 5, 6 years, get all the communities sewered, and that puts a sequence together of do a plan map and report early in the year, position yourself for grant funding based on the level of grant funding, do contract documents in the fall, get that project under construction the next year while you're doing the plan map and report and the documents for the next area, and you sequence it that way through so that at the end of this time period, you've got all of the communities sewered. Now,
That
This
certainly is the best interest for Somers going forward.
Right.
It's in the best interest of all the
ambitious.
homeowners. It's the best interest of water quality for New York City and for our immediate
Correct.
area. Obviously, the cost to the homeowner, as we've seen in Shenorock and other areas. Okay, great, I'm for it. How much does it cost me every
Right.
year? And that's going to be
well,
the.
we've done some
the
preliminary looks, right, at this already, and as we spoke to them, there's a level that with the at the state controller's office, that as long as it's below a certain level, it's an automatic. Or you only need to petition if you get above that level, and that level's about, I don't know if it's
800?
I thought it was
It
1,000.
might be up to 1,000.
But it's like $1,000. We think that we're gonna be within that, we're gonna be at 1,000 or less, and frankly,
1,000 meaning 1,000
a year,
per,
home.
right.
Right. So the more we can leverage the money we have and the more successful we are with grant programs, the lower that number should
And we
get.
want to get that lower,
And
because we
that's-
saw resistance over in Shenorock.
Right, and that's what we have to do. That's why this program is really,
Right.
this is, what I've tried to lay out here is not just a capital plan, but a funding plan as well, that puts the two together. And this, longer-term approaches, it probably I would imagine, if you would want to start understanding some more specifics about than just saying, hey, Joe's saying it's going to be 1,000 or less. I'm sure you would want to know, what's the worst case? If we're successful under this grant and that grant, as we're building this, what might it be, so we can get a bracket? And that would be part of this long-term initial piece of work that I've suggested in the proposal document to get started on, right? Which is to do the master plan essentially for the rest of Lincolndale, all of Purdy's, connect it, understand the cost implications, and that would serve as a document that could not only give you an understanding of the cost to residents and how we would build it and our opportunities to get grant funding, but it would also give you a document that you could use for negotiations with Heritage Hills.
You need a public relations plan also
We-
with all these communities.
Well, we do. Remember,
Yeah.
the town board has already approved that. We've already have
You
money
already
in place
have,
for
yeah,
that, and
you
we've
have.
already been meeting on that. I mean, once we decide, the town board decides a path forward, I think then the next meetings and workshops start to get around the public outreach and the public campaign.
Right, so,
When we actually
so
know what
we
we're
do
doing.
have, and we've had for the last year and a half, I guess, a
Shenorock.
lake sustainability
Yeah, but
group,
you can talk
which is
about-
comprised of Lincolndale, Shenorock, and representation from
Yeah, I've been
Purdy's.
to those.
Yeah,
But you
so we
did-
get
Lake Purdy's.
participation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
Good.
so, yeah,
There's a lot of
we're
excitement.
not doing this in a vacuum.
Right. There's a lot of excitement. The community members that we're meeting with are excited, they're anxious, they want to move forward, they're looking forward to getting out
Quality
front.
water, quality,
Right,
sure.
very
You know,
anxious.
in the Peach Lake
Just don't want to pay
job,
for it.
we had enough money to build the project. I think it was over 30 million. But New York City also agreed there to participate in the annual operation and maintenance of the district on an ongoing basis. So they pick up something in excess of 40% a year
Wow.
of the O&M.
Well, we
which
should
wa-
talk about that.
Yeah, which went a long way to
Wow.
keeping that cost below the
Yeah.
state controller
I mean,
guidelines.
it would make sense for them to want to contribute because ultimately
Right.
it
So we
helps
gotta,
them.
we gotta
Right.
Well,
have that
and I think that's
conversation.
the county executive's motivation, is that, look, you know, we have these communities that are under MS4 regulations that are sandwiched in between 4 watersheds.
Right.
Everything in those communities drains into the New York City water supply. Give us a
Yeah.
hand here.
Yeah, because
No,
it's not
we
just
want-
building the projects, but you gotta help the residents be able to afford them.
Bless you.
And it's actually easier for the city to come up with those smaller amounts annually than these huge amounts
Right.
that we're talking about initially.
Right.
And the original plan, or the original problem, had 2 possible solutions, and one was $4 billion for massive treatment plants.
Like 30 years, like 20 years ago.
Right, and then the other plan was, rather than treat it before it goes into consumption, let's reduce the pollutants
Correct.
before they go into the
Correct.
system, and it would be more cost
It
effective.
was a watershed approach versus an end point, right? You're
Right.
dealing with the upland versus at the top of
Right.
the hill versus the bottom of the hill.
Right, right. But then, you know, it makes perfect sense then. But there's an ongoing cost that it's not a one-time cost.
Right.
And you are going to save money compared to the $4 billion at that time you're talking
Right.
about. And so it does make sense. Obviously, there'd be pushback, go, oh, that's money we can put in the subways or something. So we don't want to pay it out there. But it's a legitimate argument, I think, that the ongoing operation and maintenance of this program would be part of the cost, I would think, of the DEP.
Right, so I'll explore that with Roland, and that would, of course, be part of anything that we would put
Yeah,
together
sure,
here. But I
that'd be
think,
great
you know,
help.
that's kind of where we are, and I think it's really an important moment, I think, for the town, because regardless of which path we choose, you know, even if we stick tight and we think we can get in the BOL and we start doing the base infrastructure in both communities, at that point, it's really a commitment to sewer the entirety, if not the majority of that
Yeah,
community,
right.
right? It's really making that commitment, and I think it's important for the board to look at it that way, right? Is once we start down this path, it's not like we can just, we just got the 10 million, let's just put that in, we can't get any more grant money.
No,
Oh, well,
no.
this is a path that, once we get started, my recommendation is that you proceed to the end of the road on it,
Well, it's the
right?
best interest of the town to do that.
Right.
I believe.
And the residents and the water quality, and, I mean, I did purposely pick this picture because I think it's just at the cover, it's just such a perfect picture. It's such a beautiful lake, beautiful swans, and they're swimming on top of seaweed,
that's
right?
what that is.
You know, that's actually a photo that I took
I thought it was a bad
in
prayer.
Shenorock.
That's what I thought. That was a bad prayer.
We don't have that.
You don't. Well, with the charges, you're charging us, certainly.
Oh, I set myself up for that one, didn't I? So, those are that's the update. That's where we are. I've also accompanied this with a proposal to get started on this. That it can be modified. Those are part of the next steps, right? I think we should have a conversation about about what you want to do and I'll revise accordingly. But the proposal I put in front of you is to move forward on option 3, which is let's get Lincolndale started, plan, map, and report, such that we can position ourselves for grant money this year, not utilizing the money for Shenorock, while on a parallel path, we're taking doing the work with the BOL to get into Shenorock, and then Shenorock in, and then next year we could start along this sequence queuing up the Shenorock project in that same sequence that I described previously. So that's that, and then doing the
So
master
you're
plan.
recommending 3. That's your recommendation.
And I can tell you that my recommendation on 3 is very much founded in the uncertainty around getting into the district, which all of you may have a much better level of comfort with that than I do, right? Because you're much more connected to the political structure than I am in the
We are
county.
connected.
Well,
Totally connected.
You know,
and
so
we have no better chance of doing that this year with our
With our county legislator.
county
Right.
legislator.
Right, yes, let's,
And
while he's
regardless
there,
of
and he'll
which-
fight for us.
regardless of which path
And
you go on,
Yeah.
you have to be continuing to push on the BOL
Right.
for getting in, regardless of whether we want to just get moving on Shenorock or waiting or move it, whatever it is, that is a part of everything, is continuing to push on the
Say
BOL.
Next week, I will.
I'm always available if anybody has any questions, you want to talk to me between meetings. If, Rick, if after some feedback, you'd like me to come back next week to talk more, next month to do something else, just let me know. I just think it's an important time for us, knowing the grant cycles and the timeline of the grant cycles, to be prepared for those. This year, we need to get started right away. There's not much time left. There's only, 5 months left before that plan, map, and report would have to be done, and as Roland knows, there's a lot of moving parts to that.
Right, well, I think you and I, and possibly Warren, will be going down to the planning department, number one, to talk about the budget, and number two, promoting getting Somers to the BOL
Okay.
for the allocation of the 10 million. Once that's shored up, then we'll start the petition to get into the district. All right, Joe.
All right.
Thanks, Jim.
Joe.
So, thank you, and again, if anybody has any questions, feel free.
We got questions.
Thanks, Joe.
On the next two items, I know I'm not here for the next two items, but on the community benefits package, I know I owe you a performance bond number.
Yeah.
I should have that to you, early next week. I didn't know if you needed it for tonight. I
No.
figured you needed it for next Thursday, but,
Well, we need it before DeChico's requested CO, for
right.
sure.
I didn't know if you needed it for the Amendment 2 document,
No,
which I
I
figured
don't
would
need
be
it for the
voted on.
document. It's
Okay.
not in the document. It just says that you will submit an estimate for their performance bond that they have to comply with. And there may also be a third component now with Sebastian Capital,
Yeah, yep.
where there's a small segment, we're gonna need an easement from them. There's sidewalk there that's gotta be built, so that's gonna be part of the performance
Yep.
bond.
So I went over that with Saret. I'll have you those numbers no later than mid next week, so
great.
you'll have those numbers.
Where is that piece with Sebastian Capital? Where?
Well,
Near
right.
Fireman's Field.
Yeah, if you,
Oh,
well,
that's there?
well, if you ever are walking, you see there's the pressure relief valve.
Right.
That's, kind of that
Yeah,
sticking,
yeah.
to get around that with the sidewalk,
Yeah.
you gotta go on Sebastian's property.
That is theirs.
Yeah.
That's theirs over there.
They've got a little slip that's about
Oh,
100
those
feet.
IBMs.
It's about 100 feet
I
that
didn't
fronts on
know that.
202.
Oh,
It's about 100 feet that fronts on 202, and it's right where that
it's
where that
between the
release
town
valve
center
is.
and the fireman's field.
Correct.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Joe and I had a
Understood.
conversation about, so here you are coming into the town of Somers from the west, and here's this, unsightly air vent. Is there another application, and who owns that? Is that
That is
Heritage or is it schools?
I believe that is the school's infrastructure, because Heritage, I don't think they start till the next manhole down the line. I think I'm not 100% on
Okay.
that,
Yeah,
but I think it's connected to the school.
It's a
That air
tangled
release valve,
web.
because it goes with their pump station. If they, their pump station is what necessitates that air release valve.
well, is it conceivable? Maybe we get that moved?
It's got to be connected to the pipe. We could hide it in various ways. Hide it with shrubbery. You can hide it with,
Natural
a
border.
structure.
Yeah, but we still got to get the sidewalk around it.
Well,
That's
the
right.
sidewalk still has to go around it. I mean, really to move it doesn't, because it's providing air release. Because what happens is when you got a pipe that goes like this and it's being pumped, right? At some point you got an air pocket when that's not pumping, and so when it repumps again, you've got to give an opportunity for that air to get out, and so it's always at the high point. So that's situated at the high point of that.
So I
that
guess
line.
my question is it less of a task to relocate that valve, that air release,
Then just
add
go around it.
so we can get in the right of way,
I-
or
I-
go through the easement?
My suspicion is that the path of least resistance. I can't imagine Sebastian wouldn't very quickly sign an authorization to give us let us on to put the sidewalk in that area, right? So to me, moving that would be it requires health department approvals. It's going to require, right? There's a long. It's not like we can just do it on because we want to.
Well, let me ask, is that air coming, what is that coming out of that? Air?
Yeah.
Clean air?
Yeah. Well, it's air that's
Yeah,
in the pipe.
vents,
But
vents, air that's in the pipe.
yeah, maybe if you just. I don't know. I don't know if
Just-
you'd want to sit there and like wait for that
just
to come
check.
out and like sit there.
Well,
And
I mean, that's the,
there's not
that's-
enough of it coming out.
that's
that
the
creates
point.
An odor issue, right?
well, or a health issue.
There's
Now-
not. It's not worried about either one of those.
There's a piece of property there that, I remember we were at a meeting last year, to complete that sidewalk, there's a piece of property there that the school district has to give us the easement or the okay for,
Yeah.
right? Now, that hasn't happened yet, am I correct?
Well, it's going to happen now. We negotiated the easement with both the schools, and there's a piece at the fire company as well.
Right.
We need an easement from them. Those are fully negotiated. We've been waiting for the descriptions, which just came in.
Okay.
So I just have to attach the
Okay, so that-
descriptions to the documents and get them out to the respective attorneys, and that'll be done.
Okay.
Okay.
So that was on that one. I just wanted to kind of just let you know I'm working on that. And on the next one, which is the Erstad Biddle getting into the sewer district. I know that everybody knows this, but just for the any authorization to extend, which I have no objection to, should be absolutely crystal clear that it's connected to that plant ultimately being accepting the flow from, accepting the flow. I mean, we're in this situation right now, right, where the Chico's is ready, the plant's not ready, right, and I just would suggest that in some way, if it's not already in there, that it's crystal clear that they can't connect until that plant is accepted by the DOH.
Right. Well, I have a copy of the executed sewer reserve capacity agreement that Erstad Biddle has signed, and so has Heritage, and their user agreement. So those are both fully executed.
Okay.
I think it's clear that you can't connect until the Board of Health says you can connect.
Correct. That's true. And
So I don't know.
But it-
I don't know. The reason why I'm saying it because I thought it
But
was
it's not-
evident all along, and we've talked about it all the way. But it surely surprised somebody
Well,
over
isn't
here,
it,
right? And
I
wouldn't
thought
want
that
to-
was a pump.
Don't even get me started
I thought that was a
on
pump
that.
capacity issue.
Because
So-
I've been kind of, look, it's a new business trying to get open in town. I've been promoting, trying to cut all the red tape we can. What this comes down to is the Heritage Hills plant getting upgraded. It's in the midst of this upgrade. DEC, because they have a speedies permit that they've been violating for years and years, will not allow any additional capacity.
Any
Wh-
connection.
Whether we have, they're in the district, everything's approved, the connections have been made, they won't allow it. The health department is, got everything they need at this point.
They've even approved the bypass. The health department's been very good to work with the Heritage Hills to get a bypass in while they're waiting for some pumps to come in the spring. But it's the DEC now that because
So
of
that's the
violations.
last bit of the hurdle. I mean, Heritage Hills probably drops 30% number of residents leave there.
Right.
So
You have more
normal
capacity than
flow is not normal
Right,
up there.
right.
So, but that's.
So I just because it was I only bring this up because I wouldn't want it to be full disclosure because it seemed like it was a surprise to the Chicos, right? That they weren't ready or
I mean, this is the number one question that you walk around town, they want to know when is the Chico's
When can I go
opening?
shopping?
if you haven't been inside, it's worth
Yeah,
a look.
I've been
It
to it.
is
It's
a
awesome.
beautiful, beautiful.
It's
My son got a
awesome.
job there.
Did he?
He's working at the Millwood right now.
He's the manager.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
I'm not surprised.
Pardon me.
So anyway, I just wanted to just provide that on those two action items, and I will let you get through the rest of the
So,
agenda.
so the plant is constructed, it's
It's
a
work-
permitting issue right now?
They're in the.
Or is it constructed
The
and
big
be
issue,
tested?
I'll give you the 3-minute version, right, which is, it was upgraded years ago. It has a permit for 702,000 gallons per day capacity. They're
Right.
operating at about 300,000 gallons. When the
Right.
regulations were instilled back in 1997, they initiated a plant upgrade. Spent $7 or $8 million on a plant upgrade to put tertiary or third level of treatment on the
Sand
back end
filter.
of this, right? And the filters they put in couldn't handle the flow. So what was happening is they couldn't handle the flow, so they were bypassing the flow during wet weather conditions, and it was going in and they're getting violations, right? So in other words, the sand filters couldn't handle the rate of flow,
Right.
and the tertiary filters couldn't handle the flow either, right? So they had an issue. They were okay with the 300,000, but as soon as it rained and they got a little infiltration into their system, they were having overflows, and that's what triggered their violations. Now, of course, from the Heritage Hills' perspective, they're like, hey, look, DEP, you're the one who paid for this upgrade. You're the one who mandated this upgrade. Fix my plant. I got a 700,000 gallon. So, of course, it's not that easy because somebody designed the plant, somebody built the plant, so lawsuits were flying around for a couple of years. That was holding up the upgrade. And then supposedly the lawsuit was resolved and they were going to get moving. I was assured in our meeting that we had that it would be done by the end of this year. And we're like, oh, great, that'll work with with the Chicos, and then obviously I drive past it every day. They're still working on it. And last time I said it'll surely be done by the end of the first quarter, right? So that's
Is that the latest?
the latest. That
Actually, I spoke with Rick O'Rourke today. Hi, Jody Cross from Zarin and Steinmetz. So
Come
I
on
spoke
up.
with-
Come on up here, yeah.
If you can shed some light on this?
Thank you. I happened to speak with Rick O'Rourke
And,
today.
I'm sorry, your name?
Jody Cross from Zarin and Steinmetz. I represent Erstat Biddle. So, as was mentioned, we entered into a sewer service agreement and a capacity reservation agreement. So I did call Rick to find out what's going on, because we all hear the news and we all read the articles about the Chicos. So he advises me that he's been told that they anticipate the construction to be completed this month, by the end of this month.
Okay.
Right, and then there's probably a 1 month of getting all the paperwork in place and the sign-offs and those kind. I think they also have some other violations they have to resolve, so hopefully, they're addressing those as well.
Well, I know when they finish the construction, I've been told it's like 2 to 3 weeks where they still need to do testing and all that.
Right, that's for the plants. What I'm worried about are the other violations on the I&I and their system and the other thing. Hopefully those have been paid attention to. I haven't been monitoring that.
Please.
Are we talking
I
about
mean-
DEC violations?
Yeah.
or- Okay, because they did get
Full good news.
Department of Health violations. They've already had a hearing. That's been settled,
Yeah.
Right.
so.
So, that's the short story. Why
I
we're
mean, this
still
guy's
in-
invested money over here, he's ready to go, and he can't get off the ground because
A lot of it, in all honesty, was the DEP and this lawsuit issue slowed them down for years.
but they just will not entertain a workaround to get this guy started.
The health department has, the DEC will not,
DEC won't. All right.
Right.
so.
Okay.
Anyway, well, thank you for everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Joe.
All right,
If
Joe.
anybody has any
Yeah.
questions on what we talked about, please feel free to reach out, okay?
Good. How are
Okay,
you?
And Rick, and you and I can connect next week.
By
Excellent.
all means.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a nice night.
You too, Joe.
Okay, so the next item here is, we did talk about marijuana issue.
Oh, no, it's not.
We're gonna hold the public hearing, Tom, just for your
Good.
edification,
Okay.
March 7th. Number 5, then, consideration of amendment number 2 to Somers Crossing Community Benefits. That's the sidewalk issue we just talked about. We're gonna do an amendment to that to add that.
We're doing amendment number 2 to the community benefits agreement to allow DeChicos to get its CO and post a performance bond to guarantee completion of the sidewalks.
Good.
When weather permits.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Good.
Yeah, we don't,
What
yeah,
you'll
don't
have
wanna
to,
hold that
what
up.
you'll have to consider is an end date
Of when it has to be.
for when it has to be
Right.
completed, so that then the performance bond would be called if it wasn't complete. So I don't need it tonight, but,
Well, soon as we don't know when they're gonna open.
yeah, but you know when spring will be.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
So
we hope.
I don't, we really need, we should have asked Joe, but he'll need not only to give us the estimate on the amount, but a sufficient timeline
Completion
of
date.
when it could be completed.
Okay.
I think we should be a little bit lenient under the circumstances and how many
Well,
delays they've experienced.
course.
I mean, the facts of the matter is,
It's like,
you know, they put the sidewalk in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
So I would say if they have good, what's holding them up were the easements and everything else. That's why they couldn't do
Yeah.
the rest of it.
Okay.
But I would say,
Do it.
you know, mid-July or August, everything should
Oh,
be,
yeah.
should be done.
Definitely.
Easy.
All right, so we'll move that to the consensus agenda with the amended,
That you gave me, right?
okay. Okay, number 6.
And we'll contact Joe just to get an idea of the amount and the dates.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amount and date, exactly.
Right.
Okay, so number 6 is authorize supervisor to execute the following. For the petition for the extension of the Heritage Hills Sewer Works to include the boundaries of the Erstat Biddle properties known as Town Center at Somers per letter dated January 25th, 2019 from Zarden and Steinmetz.
Is that Mike Zarin?
Zarin and Steinmetz, yes.
Zarin?
Mike Zarin.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so, first order of business would be to accept the petition. Patty, we do roll call on this? Roland? Roll?
You'll need a roll call to adopt the order calling for the public hearing. Not for the petition. The petition you just need to receive.
Okay.
So we
as well
can
as the
just
other
do,
documents.
Yeah.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So
Now you
moved.
declare yourself lead agencies.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Make a motion to declare. Make a motion to declare
yourself lead
ourselves
agency?
as lead agency for the
Second.
purpose,
Second.
for these purposes.
You got it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
And then to adopt the order calling for a public hearing, which requires a roll call?
Second.
All in favor?
No, you have to-
Aye.
Pretty
you
sure
have to
he
do a
can't
roll
make
call
it.
on
All right.
Councilman William G. Faulkner.
Aye.
Councilman Richard G. Quincy.
Yes.
Councilman Anthony J. Sirica.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas A. Garrity Jr.
Yes.
Supervisor Rick Morrissey.
Yes.
And we set that up for March 7th, the public
Yeah.
hearing.
That's March 7th also.
Mm-hmm.
Marijuana and sidewalks, or water.
Okay.
And lastly, to refer the
Application.
Yeah.
application to the planning board, I guess that's the construction part of it?
Correct. There's, putting the infrastructure in is going to require site plan approval. So we need to go before the planning board, and since it's a coordinated review, we wanted to come to you first to get a referral over to the planning board.
Okay, so when I read that, refer application to the planning board for concurrent review of the site plan, does that go to the county planning board?
No.
That doesn't have to, the sewer district piece of this. Okay.
No, well, they'll get involved in the construction.
Yeah, no, I know,
They'll
but-
be inspecting it, but we don't have to refer to the county planning board.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so we make a motion to refer? Okay, I'll make a motion to refer the application to the planning board for
second.
concurrent review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay.
Thank you.
That's-
Yeah. So just so the public's, we're expanding the boundaries, the legal boundaries of the sewer district.
Right.
So it covers the shopping center, right?
Correct.
We've,
The sewer district has already been expanded to handle the Chico's.
Somers Crossing.
Okay. So,
And just,
Correct.
just by way of background, when we were before the planning board back in 2017 for some facade and circulation improvements, the planning board suggested that we come before you
Yeah.
to expand. Since it was around the same time that Somers Crossing was doing their construction, it made sense.
We all figured it was a good idea when we first started, so.
Yeah, I mean, this, I would think it would be an economic boost for your shopping center. Because overnight, once this is connected, your restaurants, will be no longer limited to, by seating, by 35 gallons of gray water a day.
Right.
So whatever fire code then allows.
That's good.
So, yeah, we're glad to do it.
Great.
Good.
See you in
Thank
March.
you.
Thank you.
good. All right.
That's your
Oh, it's everybody. Wow. You're taking a whole crowd now. We put it at the end of the agenda just so we had a crowd for the meeting.
Yeah.
I travel with a posse.
There you go.
It's at
Now they know
times
more
like
than they
this,
wanted to know about
Yeah,
the
exactly.
choice aggravation program.
it's at times like this, I say, bring the chairs from the conference room out to the
Well,
seats here.
you're welcome to bring, we can get Marty to put those out here. Like,
I had a little break.
Had a little break, yeah. It's all
I
right.
had an 11-year-old who wanted me to come to her event. so
How'd that go? Good.
family first.
Oh, too bad.
That's all right.
Okay, item 7, authorize a waiver of a 30-day advance notice for the Somers Point Restaurant and Catering LLC.
That's fine.
Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Second.
Discussion, there's new partners up there, there's, gonna open up the grill and the catering, and, we do this for new businesses
All the time.
because we're promoting business.
When are they expecting to open?
February 13th, soft opening.
February 13th.
I thought they said last week, somebody had said they ate there already.
Oh, really?
See,
I thought-
this is what we want the DEC to do for Turcos.
Turcos.
Turcos, I mean, the Chicos.
Oh, boy.
The Chicos.
Remember when Pepsi was here, we could never say Coke? It's the same thing. yeah.
More importantly, DeChico and Sons.
Okay, I should have known better to say discussion
Not
because
family
you guys
market.
can discuss. All right, so I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, under financials, authorize the following per January 3rd memo from Robert Kehoe, Director of Finance, to adopt the 2018 highway paving budget to be funded by the general fund, capital fund balance. The adoption of the solar panel project at the highway department to be funded by $100,000 SAM grant. So we'll move that to the consensus agenda.
Awesome.
Under personnel, our vacancies, upcoming vacancies on the rec board. And I'm gonna move 3 through 6. I'll make a motion to authorize the reappointment of Laura Parisi, the hiring of Mike Reap, the hiring of Dennis Drogan, and authorize the following actions per memo dated January 23rd from myself regarding John LaGrange. So I'm making a motion to move.
Second.
Okay, and under discussion, I'll give you a little, very little briefing on that last item. With our, my confidential executive assistant being head of HR, she's been reviewing titles and appropriateness, and we find out that we needed to do title changes here at the Parks and Rec Department. So this is an outcome of a lot of hard work on her behalf to get us worked out here. So I have a motion, and do I have a
You
second?
do?
And so moved. Okay, proposed.
We got to vote on it.
Yeah, we had a
All-
motion, we had
all
a
in favor?
second.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now it's so moved.
Now we got it.
Yes, okay.
Details.
The two that you and I just tried to do didn't work.
Yeah, there you go. So, proposed consensus
Give back your
agenda.
Pretty
Any
straightforward.
question? Yep. Okay.
Those two items are fine.
Our next board meeting will be on the 14th.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple of announcements here.
Looking forward to hanging out with you guys on Valentine's Day.
There-
You're gonna be here, right, Roland?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right, well, I'll bring chocolate for each other.
Yes. There'll be heart chocolates for all.
Yeah.
I'm sure one of our councilmen will arrange that.
I think we should invite our spouses to the meeting.
Mine will not
Yeah.
enjoy the invitation.
Yeah.
Mine will not come.
Hey, look, we could go out to dinner and have something really nice, or you could come to the town board meeting, you know? Oh, yeah,
We're gonna
let's
talk
do
about
that.
marijuana.
All right.
Oh, no, we're not, that's next week.
So before we,
We're doing that.
before I make the announcements, why don't you give us a quick synopsis? We had a utility task force meeting.
Oh,
This
yeah,
week?
we had another one. I'll start off by saying that, again, the meetings, and Richard said it best last time, when they started out a bit acrimonious early on, they're much better now. I've, said a couple of things at the meeting. For instance, there was a tree leaning over the road that was on our street that was going to take out a bunch of wires. I got calls from 4 different neighbors. It wasn't near my house. I called the highway department, who immediately called Sam Miller, and within a couple hours, there was somebody out there. They assessed it, saw that it was indeed dangerous, and they cut it down within a few hours.
I saw that.
Yeah, so we've, we commented that the, again, and we said this many times, giving you credit, the fact that we have tree trucks at Pepsi and others at IBM has helped us immensely, and they've indicated the same, that it helps them, and they love being up here on the old IBM property. They say they don't have to worry about backing up trucks, there's enough room to turn around. But we had a good meeting, covered a lot of stuff that we covered before. I did the minutes should be online fairly soon. I'll post them as I always do. Some of the big takeaways were that they are before the PSC with their rate case. One of the items within that is that they're looking to possibly go to a 3-year tree trimming program. So they have to see, they say they usually get pushback, but we'll see where that goes.
Sorry,
So
that's 3
that's
years
better.
from
5.
two.
We're currently at 5.
So it
No,
should,
5.
so it increases the cycle, more intense.
Yeah, they would be coming more
More
every-
often.
Yeah,
More
they'd be
often.
coming every 3 years versus every 5. the reclosures are in, we both, well, they're gonna add some additional reclosures they added. I don't know if that was in addition to the 19 that there are up, if they were saying there were 2 or 3 more.
I think it was to get it to 19.
To get it to 19. Just from personal experience, other than a few instances which they did talk about, I think the storms that we've had recently, which in past years, these types of storms would have put more people out of power longer, did not. There were some isolated cases where some things happened. Again, we talked about the cars hitting poles, which they can't do anything about anyway. But from the pure effect of the storm, I think the reclosures and some of the tree trimming that they've been doing has helped us immensely. You want to comment on anything?
One of the things, the Public Service Commission is what regulates the rates, of course, that they can charge. So when they want to improve their services, they would apply for an increase in rates. So, for example, to go from a 5-year to 3-year cycle would require more money, and that has to be approved by the Public Service Commission. Everyone's going to say, yeah, $5, you bet. Well, what if it's $50? So we don't know what those numbers are. They didn't disclose them to us. Another one that they look for is from ground to sky. Right now, as we all know, there's a 10 and 15 foot distance from their land and from their wires that they can clear. And there's some who believe, as they have in Connecticut, where if you go from ground to sky, you have fewer outages over the course of time. That probably has some downside in terms of aesthetics, but some believe at least it would be more reliable. We also talked a little bit about the towns program.
Yes.
And how to use what we have allocated, $100,000. And Sam Miller, who is the arborist for them, had some recommendations on about conducting an inventory, especially on secondary circuits rather than the primary, so they can take care of it. He said, but you might get more bang for your buck if you inventory the secondary circuits and then look for what work would need to be done to stabilize those.
And if I can piggyback on that, please. One of the things that was mentioned was that, recently these storms, it's, 70, 80-foot trees, which I did not know were the ash trees are the worst ones. And it's because there was the ash
beetle
came in, and that's how come you'll find those will fall very easy. But the problem with those are but they're usually not in the purview of NYSEG. They might be in our right of way, but they might even be out of our right of way because they could be 60, 70, 80 feet high, and they come down easy. So that's one of the things that we'll actually be reviewing as we get an arborist and look to start our.
Are we getting
trimming.
any closer to
We have to.
getting an arborist to tell us where?
Well, that's what we would have to do as a town board.
We
would have to make that action.
So let me ask.
Right, well, I'm trying to think. Was the highway superintendent at this?
He was.
Yes, he was.
Okay. Did he give a?
No.
Because wasn't he going to try to find or check out Adirondack Tree Service?
I don't know.
I'll ask him.
contract.
All right.
I don't remember.
Yeah, he was in and out.
There's somebody on a state contract. He was going to try to
Oh, okay. We don't know.
get down here and
We can have a
cut some
discussion.
trees.
But why
the
isn't
town's
it?
right away.
Why isn't it NYSEG's responsibility to do
Well-
the planning of where the trees are and
Well,
cut them down?
they are limited by what they're allowed to do in terms of that 10 to 15 foot sort of area around their wires. So the discussion and the disagreement comes from what if the tree is 50 foot away, it's dead, and it's going to come and hit a wire, and you don't got to be an arborist to figure out this is a danger. And that becomes a more delicate issue if it's on somebody else's property. Are they responsible? The general answer has been yes, but some say no. On a state road, one of the people on the committee says if it's on a state road, clearly the state says that the state DOT has to take care of that. So others say, there's no way you can't spend taxpayer money on somebody's private land.
That's the big one.
But you can advise their insurance company that this is a hazard and maybe shift that liability. And the insurance company might say, you better take that tree out, otherwise your insurance isn't going to cover. Those are the discussions, and actually we don't have any clear answers on those. Those are good questions you asked a good question. We've asked those. We don't have a clear answer because in this committee, there are people who disagree on that. We are looking for a clear answer. Who's liable and what can legally be done? And we have several different opinions on that. We don't know yet.
But we've allocated $100,000 to do something in a very complex system, right? We got
And
a
that's
right
not a
of-
lot of money that will do a lot of
That
work.
won't do a lot of work. So we sort of have this right of way. We're in the right of way, and they're in that same right of way up to a point.
What if their wires are on one side of the
Yeah.
street and we have a right of way on the other side of the
That's the problem, is
street?
that the
That
wires on
might
the
be
left side of the
something.
street are,
They can't do anything
There's a
to it.
70-foot tree on the right side.
Yeah.
They're not gonna go anywhere near that 70-foot
That's
tree
it.
on the right side because
But
it's
we-
not within
but we
there.
could.
But we could if it's in our right of way, and those are the things we're looking for. If we have a dead
Right.
ash,
So why, yeah, okay, but, that's like okay, so that's like a small strip.
well, no, but that's what we're running into in these last few storms. We're running into trees that are far out of their right of way that are coming down, and we're just determining if they're in our right of way or if they're on private property or where they are and how we deal with them.
But if that tree is threatening their wires,
Doesn't matter.
No.
they must have an appeal,
Well-
ask permission to get it done. It's a threat to their system.
They will advise the homeowner, but they
So we
apparently
would
are not
advise the
going to
homeowner.
pay for it.
But we-
Now, there is a difference. There's a gentleman on the committee who has experience in this, who will say that that is NYSEG's. That is their responsibility in return for having a monopoly on providing electricity to this town and all over New York State. They get from New York State the right to do that. In return for that, they have to guarantee that they will do that in a reliable way. And if they see that tree across the street that is a danger and it's clear, their arborist says this thing is going to fall, they have to do it. They're saying not. He's saying yes, he doesn't work for them, but he used to work for Con Ed and do work for the state.
Well,
That's why I say we don't know.
We should sort of apply their dollars, but our dollars to get them to do it. I would also say, though, they have a good relationship with the, on one hand, we're talking about, making a program and getting it done, but I think there's a lot of whisper going back and forth with the good relations that Tom has with the tree arborist there. I mean, they call each other up. They do.
Well, that's
they
what
do
happened on our
work.
street, yeah.
Yeah, they do
They-
take
But
the
again,
stuff down.
that tree was
have.
was in the town right away.
Yeah.
So he called them up and he said, hey, can you get one of your guys over here? It's gonna fall, it's gonna hit
Yeah.
your wires, and they came over and they did it. Now, in that case, they didn't have to talk to the homeowner. If it was another
Right.
5 feet back, I'm not sure the homeowners would have said, go ahead.
And they won't say go ahead to us either.
Right.
That's possible. And
It
then
is
what do you
possible.
do in that situation? Because the common good, so to speak, is threatened by that tree that might take down wires. But as I know, I know a homeowner said, you think I'm spending money on that? I'll wait until this sucker comes down and then somebody else. You really? I was a little surprised at his
I mean, it's
behavior
not
on
cheap
that.
to take a tree down.
But it is
$1,000
not
a
cheap.
It's $1,000,
Oh, it is
$2,000 bucks,
expensive.
depending upon the tree.
It's expensive.
It is, and some people just can't afford it. There was other talk about. The good news is that the NYSEG has made a commitment. We talked about budgets. Talks cheap, actions speak. So you can say you've done all these wonderful things, and we haven't had a problem, but maybe it's just good luck. But they were saying they gave evidence that Rob McDonough said, I have a budget to do whatever I need at this point with the hardware to keep it up and running. The other side of it is the arborist, which is the trees. Most electricity is lost because of trees. He couldn't talk about his budget for
He wouldn't
reasons
say anything.
I don't understand. It's a public document, but he said he'll check
He
and
said he
get
had
back to
check.
us.
It was
Who was
a
that,
private
Sam?
pay grade.
Couldn't
Sam
say?
Miller.
Yeah, I didn't quite get that one. But they do seem to have made a commitment to, if you need the hardware to upgrade it, we'll do it. And don't forget, this is new ownership over the last 2 years, I think.
I mean, there's no
years.
question you guys
So they've
are
done
having an
that.
Hybrid
impact.
draw.
There's no question
Well, I
you're
don't,
having an impact.
they felt the public pressure. I'm not sure it's us, but they
Yeah,
felt
well, we're
that
part of the
public
public.
pressure.
That's us.
I mean,
All right.
yeah, exactly. Well, maybe not you two guys, everybody.
It's Tom.
Chris was there, it's Chris.
It's Tom. It's Chris, right? And I think the last thing is a lot of talk about the website and the upgrading of information. The good news there is, the bad news is it won't be perfect no matter what. But they've really made it impact, and they've explained it pretty well, what they do and how they do it. So when there's a tree down or a wire down as a result of tree, they put in an estimated time of what it would be to replace that. In the past, as they say, their algorithms were wrong. The algorithm was based upon, in the middle of the day when all their guys are there, here's what it would take 2 hours. So we put 2 hours on the website. But it might be Saturday night, and that isn't applying. So they've taken new algorithms that they will put into the website, which hopefully will give more accurate and updated information. What Tom said, others members of the committee said, you know, it's more important to be accurate than to give like pie in the sky that people get disappointed on, or the eternally popular assessing.
Assessing. They're trying to get rid of that word.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of that. So those are good things. And they also talked about a lot of money going into Heritage Hills
Yes.
and updates there and some of the underground wiring that they will be assessing once the ground is unfrozen.
Yeah, that's,
And they're going to be assessing that.
just for the people up there, I know, Condo 2?
Yes, too.
Condo 2, we understand, you know, there was an issue with below-ground wire. They've sort of jerry-rigged a way to get the electricity going above ground.
Yeah, it looks
Unfortunately,
bad.
they're unable to do anything below ground until the ground is no longer frozen. So it will be there again until Roland deems that it's spring.
Did you
Deem
see
it
the
now,
shot?
deem it now.
So we're thinking end of April or somewhere around there, and then they'll put it under. But they are aware of it. There is a conduit around it, so, you know, to make it safer. But I think Kim might have told you that, and we just wanted to make sure Pat Bloss knew and could let the people up there know.
Well, I do, once again, want to commend you guys on this task force. You know, we had an issue in town, we pulled this task force together, we got, you know, as the supervisor, I filed that complaint with the Public Service Commission. So once we got their attention, I mean, you guys have them, they're here every other month.
Yeah, they've been really good
No,
about
they
that.
have been great.
But if you don't have the task force, if you don't meet with them, if you don't hold your feet to the fire, we may not be getting the results we
Maybe
are.
not.
So
Right now, we'll keep doing
I
it.
commend you for.
Our next meeting, I think, is April 9th.
It is.
So we meet with them again. Also, the Energy and Environment Committee is going to have a public information session, similar to what the information is given out. Maybe you want to tell us
Yeah,
about
why
that?
not?
Chris Zaberto from the Somers Energy and Environment Committee, who's been very, part of our committee.
And he's
and
on your
very
task force.
grateful.
Yeah,
Right.
on the task force.
So the Energy Environment Committee is given a yard sustainability informational series on, I believe we said it was March 5th at the Somers Library. Let me just confirm that date.
I think it is Tuesday, March 5th.
Yeah, Tuesday, March 5th. And one of the topics that we're going to discuss is just to reiterate what NYSEG's responsibility is when it comes to the right-of-ways and the tree trimming for the homeowner, so they understand.
Good.
And Sam Miller has committed to coming to this as
Yeah.
a guest speaker
Right.
to give his now opinion as an arborist on sustainable ways to plant trees in your yard that may not impede or impinge upon your wiring, the secondaries that come in, or any sort of frontage landscape that you might do. So that will be on March 5th at 7 p.m. at the Somers Library.
And we'll put it on the website and,
Yeah.
again, announce it.
Yeah, more information is always better.
I absolutely agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, so if you guys have a flyer or anything like that, on that,
Yeah, it's in development right now, and it's
send it
in
over
the final
over to
stage.
Tammy, and we'll get it up on the website.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So which,
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
thanks, Chris. Which leads me to two announcements here. Unfortunately, there is training available. It's not unfortunate about the training. It's unfortunate we have to have active shooter training. Town employees have all been through active shooter training, how to avoid, how to deny, and how to defend yourself. Westchester County is having active shooter training open to the public down at the Westchester County Center. And that's on March 6th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And this will be up on the website, but this is for the layman to come in and learn, you know, how to defend, avoid, defend, and deny. Avoid, deny, and defend yourself in an active shooter scenario. The next event I'm going to announce is a very popular one. I can speak to that because I usually go down there and help unload cars for the annual recycling shredding
shredder.
day. Yeah, we get the county shredder up here. So it's going to be here on Friday, March 29th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Rain or shine.
Is that at Reese Park again?
Reese Park by the tennis courts is usually where we set it up. And I would just say, be courteous and stay within the cones, and we
Bless you.
will get you in and out of there as soon as possible. So I want to wish everyone
Well,
a
let me make two
happy
quick announcements.
Valentine's Day, and yeah, go on to
we're
your...
back.
Well, thank you, but I'll wish it to you on the actual day.
Yes.
Maybe he's not coming.
Yeah, he might not be here. Two things, both Somer sports related. Want to congratulate Hannah Angelini, the
yeah.
girls basketball team, who scored her 1,000th point. They had a little handmade banner up there that showed all of the players who've gotten 1,000 points from way back in Bob Trogle days and Kenny
Bob
Wilkins.
Trogle, yeah, Trogle.
All those guys.
Wow. Dusty
Um,
Brown.
So, congratulations to her. Councilman Clinch can speak more to it than I can of what a great accomplishment it is, seeing as he's coached basketball throughout his whole working career. And second, I want to congratulate also the boys and girls winter track team, who both won leagues again this year by
Nice.
quite a wide margin. So, congratulations to them.
Title
Great.
Town continues.
Yeah, Titletown. Okay, if there's no other comments, concerns, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So move. Good night, Somers.
Good night.